Good morning, good morning. Hey, shout out to Copper Top for sending me this, man. I appreciate it. So I like to try to keep up with what's going on, especially the older I get, because I guess maybe because I ain't got nothing else going on.
So Trump is in China. This happened about 30 minutes ago, an hour south of us. So
You know what's crazy? I've been seeing this dude's face all on YouTube, and it's AI. This one here ain't. This is actually him. But I've noticed that they've been using this professor or whoever he is to try to do some fear mongering to people. And dude, you sit there and watch the video, and the motherfucker don't blink, and it's like, what the fuck? What's up, pimp? What's up, Chris? Good morning.
Trump came in last night, and this morning he met with President Xi at the Great Hall of the People. And let's just have a quick look. This is him getting out of his limousine. This was brought in from the United States by a military transport. He brought his entire cabinet, including Marco Rubio.
Let me back that up. Look how thick that fucking door is. Boy, I'd love to scrap that car. Huh? Pimp, you could buy beers all week long just for the scrap value of that car.
He brought his entire cabinet, including Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, as well as Peter Hegseth, who is the Secretary of War.
Is he living on the Tennessee River? If he's living on the Tennessee River, I probably done seen it. He's got a little dog. I got a pontoon boat out there. I've been going to do something, but I just ain't got time. But
okay,
or I ain't made the time. I got time. Let on bullshit you.
The last time an American president visited was 9 years ago, November 2017. So this is a very historical meeting. And as you may remember, after Trump visited Beijing, they started the trade war.
What I find interesting. This is who all he brought with him. That's kind of what I.
And we've been in a trade war ever since. I think that this meeting is very optimistic for U.S.-China relations. And a lot has to do with who came with Trump. So this is from Weibo, the Chinese Twitter. And what Chinese are focusing on is who came with Trump. So many of his family members came with Trump, including his son, Eric, his daughter-in-law, Lara. And they were excited about coming to China. Team China, guys. Okay. Much more important is the number of business executives who came with Trump. So you have Elon Musk of Tesla, and of course he does a lot of business in China. Tim Cook of Apple also does a lot of business in China. Boeing is trying to secure a $50 billion sale to Chinese airlines. And so these are our three very important business people.
Yeah,
and then you have some of the leading financial people in America, including Larry Fink of BlackRock, Steven Schwartzman of Blackstone, David Solomon of Goldman Sachs. You have Citigroup, you have MasterCard, and Visa. Okay, and these are the leading financial companies in America. And altogether, these business executives, if you put all the company's net worth together, their companies are worth over $12 trillion.
Jesus.
That's a lot of money. And these are very busy people. And quite honestly, I've worked in business negotiations. You do not bring these people together in one room unless you have a mega deal to announce to the world. Okay? So my prediction is that by tomorrow, we should have the broad contours of a U.S.-China grand bargain where the two nations reconcile their differences and they start a new chapter in world history where they work together.
So I'm about willing to bet America cuts the Middle East off with oil, which I don't understand that, right? Because China, maybe not. because China's so close to them. How would it benefit them to come past there to buy oil from us? This got something to do with that, though.
To stabilize the global economy. So what I want to do today is discuss how we got here, why a grand bargain will happen, and what this grand bargain will look like. Okay? All right. So let's discuss some of the events that led to this meeting between Xi and Trump. This is David Lee from Twitter, okay? And he's talking about like the past month, what happened. So the first thing that happened is that China blocked Manus. Manus is an AI company that Mark Zuckerberg tried to buy. And Manus was incubated in China. And if you're an AI company...
Ain't that a weird looking little motherfucking dude? Huh? That Mark dude? That bitch is a weird look. He looks weird, man.
You become very successful, you want to go to the United States because that's where all the money is, that's where all the talent is. That's how you become really, really big. But because it was incubated in China, China said, no, you can't go to the United States because this will set a bad precedent. China is trying to grow its own talent. So this shows the AI war being fought between China and the United States. Okay, so that's one thing that happened. Another thing that happened is that the US imposed sanctions on Chinese companies that do business with Iran, including satellite companies that sell commercial intelligence to Iran on where US bases are, teapot refineries, which take Iranian oil and then convert it into energy that China can use. Okay? And in response, China said, no, you cannot impose sanctions on us. If you impose sanctions on us, and if people comply with these sanctions, then we, the Chinese government, will sanction these people as well. Okay, and this is something called the blocking order. And this also seems like an escalation in the US-China trade war, where previously Chinese institutions, banks, individuals complied with US sanctions. And this is the first time the Chinese government said to Chinese people, if you're a Chinese citizen and you comply with US sanctions, then we will sanction you. Okay, so this is a very big deal. NVIDIA was not able to sell chips into China. And this is going to affect NVIDIA's bottom line. Okay, NVIDIA is right now the world's most valuable company, primarily because AI depends on their chips. Okay? China invited Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi to Beijing because China is very interested in the outcome of this war between the United States and Iran. Right now, Iran is blocking the Strait of Hormuz, and China depends on 50 to 60% of its energy needs from the Middle East. Okay? Jie Huang was not on the China list. Okay? So before Trump took off, it was announced that Jie Huang, who is the head of NVIDIA, would not come to China. And this is a very big deal because in this grand bargain, what China would want is access to NVIDIA chips, semiconductors, in order to fuel its AI. Okay? The United States and 6 other nations had a war game in the Philippines, and China sent 28 warships. Okay? Trump sent Iran an MOU. Iran made modifications, and Trump said no. Okay, so it seems like the war will only increase in the Middle East. After Iran had responded, China announced Trump's state of visit. And then yesterday and the day before, He Lifeng, who is a vice premier in China, and Scott Bessent, who's a treasury secretary, met in South Korea to try to negotiate a deal. Okay, and then what's going to happen is that Putin will visit China after Trump leaves. So if you just look at what's happening, it seems as though there's still a lot of friction between United States, and China. What I want to show you today is that all of this you can just ignore. Okay? This is all that's happening right now. But if we use game theory, if we just look at the broad contours of what's happening, we would make much better predictions as to what will happen. Okay? So all this, I think, is just theater. All right? China and the United States are not actually fighting an AI war. It's all theater. They're actually working together to promote AI. These sanctions are happening, but eventually the US and China will come to a grand bargain and they will become much more economically integrated. And Iran, China doesn't really care about Iran. Okay, China cares first and foremost about the relationship with the United States. And one piece of evidence for that is that when Foreign Minister Araghchi went to Moscow, Putin met with him for 90 minutes. And Putin expressed his sympathy and support to the Iranian people. When Araghchi came to Beijing, he only met with his counterpart, the Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Okay? All right. Another important thing is that Scott Bessent is the one who is leading the US team in China. Scott Bessent is the Treasury Secretary. This goes against protocol because it's usually...
Sorry about that. When he said that China don't care about Iran, I said that's bullshit. Any country that's getting 50 to 60% of its energy needs from somebody, yeah, that dog don't hunt. They give a fuck.
Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and the National Security Advisor, who also happens to be Marco Rubio. This team is the one that sets the agenda for the US-China visit. Because it's Scott Bessent, we can probably guess that this is probably going to be an economic negotiation. And the focus will be on finance. Basically, what America wants is for China to open up its financial sector for companies like BlackRock and Blackstone to come in to sell financial instruments to Chinese people, okay? That's what America wants. And we'll talk about more about this as we go along. All right, let's continue. Okay, so in the geopolitical landscape, it seems as though America is trying to contain China. So this is Tehran, and this is what China's trying to do. China's trying to build a high-speed rail network from Beijing all the way across Central Asia and into Europe, okay? This is a land route that Beijing wants to take in order to maintain trade with Europe. As you can tell from this map,
and I'm going to tell you something. If that happens, then the U.S. can't stop them, right? Because we're powerful by sea. And that's how we've contained a lot of these people is with our Navy. As soon as they have an overland route, it's going to be a hell of a lot harder. Because how do you stop them? How do you put the people, you know what I mean, on the land to be able to have checks and balances? At sea, we can fucking do it. On land, you can't.
Tehran is the pivot or the hub of this trade network, okay? Without Tehran, Beijing could not access Europe.
Yeah, they could send whatever they want.
And then Moscow also sees Tehran as very important as well for its north-south trade axis. Without Tehran, Beijing is completely reliant on Russia. Beijing does not want to become reliant on Russia. Beijing sees itself as the third axis of power in the world. All right, you have the United States, you have Russia, and then you have China. From a geopolitical perspective, China doesn't want to become partners with either the United States or Russia. It wants to become independent. It wants to create its own sphere of influence. Okay, and that's why Iran is very, very important.
Yeah.
So a lot of geopolitical analysts believe that
they didn't care about Iran. That's why I say that's bullshit. That dog don't hunt. That's what they used to say a long time ago when somebody was trying to run some fucking con game. They'd say that dog don't hunt. But anyways, once they do it over rail, then there is no keeping an eye and being able to inspect and all that shit. It's too hard. I mean, I guess they could from satellite. It's not the same. With military, you can stop them motherfuckers, and nobody in the civilian world gets hurt by it. Once they put it on rail and run it through people's towns and shit, it's a little different, but a lot different, really.
Beijing is forced to support Iran in this war. And what I want to show you is that's not actually the case. All right? China may want to become independent of the United States and Russia, but it cannot actually. All right. Now, there's a rumor a couple of days ago that one deal that Trump and Xi will sign in Beijing is Xi Jinping will commit $1 trillion investment into America, primarily factories that manufacture EV cars. This is a huge deal, okay? And Laura Ingraham, who works at Fox News, she thinks it's a bad thing. She thinks that this is about China coming in and trying to buy out the United States. As I'll show you later, this is retarded. Okay, I think this deal will happen, but this is a deal that shows that China is ultimately dependent on America, as opposed to China wants to take over America.
Yeah, but it's still harder. Okay. It's still harder for our military forces to be able to contain a land route. Smart mouth.
All right.
Could you imagine the shit that they could ship that we wouldn't know about, wouldn't be able to fucking stop?
How can we understand the Trump visit? Well, again, in this class, what I want to show you is that historical analogies is a really powerful way to understand the present. So the Trump visit today is analogous to Nixon's visit in 1972. Okay? So you don't know
they
this,
just got that
but before 1972,
don't they, Grizz?
America was hostile towards China, primarily because of Taiwan, where during the Chinese Civil War, the Americans were very supportive of Chiang Kai-shek and the KMT. They lost, they went to Taiwan. And when that happened, America said that, first of all, we will only recognize Taiwan as the official government of China. Second of all, we will refuse to do any business with the PRC. And third of all, we will help Taiwan eventually try to take over China. 1972, when Nixon visited, this marked a radical departure from 20 years of American foreign policy, okay? And the question then is, why would he do that? And the answer is, in 1971, the Nixon shock. So if you talk to historians, they'll give you lots and lots of different reasons as to why Nixon visited China. The main reason, from their perspective, is that Henry Kissinger, who was National Security Advisor to Richard Nixon, he was trying to triangulate between China and the Soviet Union, right? He was trying to get China on the side of the United States in order to defeat the Soviet Union. That's not true. That's something that historians made up. The real reason is that in 1971, Nixon removed the US dollar from the gold standard. And now the US dollar is worth nothing. Before you could take the US dollar and change it for gold, now it's worth nothing. If it's worth nothing, what to do now is create a demand for it. You basically have to create a Ponzi scheme. And so Nixon did two things to resolve this issue and create the US dollar Ponzi scheme. The first thing he did was create something called a petrodollar. Okay? The petrodollar is where Saudi Arabia and other Middle East countries like Qatar, UAE, they only sell their oil in US dollars. So now, before the value of US dollars was tied to gold, the gold standard, now the value of US dollars is tied to oil. Okay, if you want to buy oil and everyone wants to buy oil, you need US dollars. And this is something called a petrodollar. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing, which is relevant to us, is China. Okay, opening. The strategy is to turn China into a manufacturing base for the global economy, right? So the Middle East sells oil to the world, but China now will sell manufactured.
Listen, them kids don't build shit that lasts. I don't like buying Chinese shit. Never have. It's like some little fucking 8-year-old put it together out there in a sweatshop. And it lasts about as long. I don't think they'll do it.
Goods to the world, and China will also do so using US dollars. And these two things together create the current global economy.
All right, enough of that.
All right? Okay.
I appreciate it, Copper Top.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going.
Sometimes this dude's hard to listen to. Let me bring that down. I'll finish watching that later.
Five coders, ready to build more? Meet Base 44.
Him flipping his hair and all that shit. I don't know. It's hard to take. That's a beautiful place, though. And that Chinese dude got a big old fucking head, don't he? Ain't it funny how these people act around I'd be like, bitch, get your own fucking chair. Fuck.
习近平主席为特朗普总统对中国进行国事访问举行的欢迎宴会现在开始。
The welcoming banquet hosted by President Xi Jinping for President Donald J. Trump now begins.
首先，请习近平主席致辞。
Now a toast by President Xi.
"尊敬的特朗普总统、女士们、先生们，很高兴为特朗普总统对中国进行国事访问
Not 75%.
举行国宴。
Dude, I was looking at that stage.
我代表中国政府和中国
I was looking at that stage, pimp. That shit looked raggedy. When they first walked in, it was pretty, right?
人民
That shit's outdated.
对特朗普总统和美国代表团表示热烈欢迎。
Honorable President Donald J. Trump, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to host this state banquet in honor of President Trump during his state visit to China. On behalf of the Chinese government and people, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to President Trump and the US delegation.
这是一次历史性访问。
Right now, that motherfucker's thinking about Trump. Can we have our oil tanker back, please?
今年是中国十五开局之年，14亿多中国人民立足于5000多年中华文明深厚基础，正在以高质量发展全面推进中国式现代化。今年也是美国独立250周年，3亿多美国人民正在重振爱国、创新、开拓精神，推动美国发展迈向新的征程。中美两国人民都是伟大的人民，实现中华民族伟大复兴和让美国再伟大，完全可以并行不悖，相互成就，造福世界。
This is a historic visit.
Yeah, Sambo.
This
That's
year
why I was
marks
saying,
the
but
start of China's 15th five-year plan for economic and social development. The over 1.4 billion people of China, drawing on the rich heritage of our over 5,000-year civilization, are advancing Chinese modernization on all fronts through high-quality development. This year is also the 250th anniversary of American independence. The over 300 million American people are reinvigorating the spirit of patriotism, innovation, and enterprise,
it's like you know
and
anything
ushering
about
in a
patriotism.
new journey for the development of the United States. The people of China and the United States are both great peoples, achieving the great.
Bro, I swear to God, smart mouth. I was looking at when he was going up on that stage and all, and I was like, damn, it's almost like they trying to copy America with that shit.
Rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and making America great again can go hand in hand. We can help each other succeed and advance the well-being of the whole world.
55年前，尼克松总统派基辛格博士访华，中美开展
I will
乒
say
乓外
this, though,
交
the fact that Trump even went to China kind of serves a purpose as far as like saying that they have arrived on the world stage other than just a sweatshop.
双方官民并举，推开了中美冰封20多年的大门，成为当代国际关系史上重大事件。此后，中美之间以很多开放合作的故事，不断书写着友谊的佳话。新形势下，我同特朗普总统顺应两国人民和国际社会期待，通过多次会晤和通话，推动中美关系保持总体稳定。
I want to buy your house. I can pay you cash for your house, no matter what condition it's in.
I bet you can, bitch.
55 years ago, President Richard Nixon sent Dr. Henry Kissinger to visit China, and ping-pong diplomacy was carried out
Did that
between our
bitch
two
just say
countries.
ping pong?
Through efforts of the two governments and peoples, the door that had remained frozen for over 20 years was opened, marking a milestone in contemporary international relations. From then on, China and the United States have written many chapters of friendship through mutual openness and cooperation. Under the new situation, President Trump and I, fully aware of the expectations of our two nations and the international community, have had multiple meetings and phone calls and kept China-US relations generally stable.
今天，我同特朗普总统就中美关系和国际及地区形势深入交换意见。我们一致认为， 中美关系是当今世界最重要的双边关系，只能搞好，不能搞坏。两国合则两利，斗则俱伤，应该成为伙伴而不是对手。我们同意构建中美建设性战略稳定关系，推动中美关系稳定、健康、可持续发展，为世界带来更多和平、繁荣、进步。
Today, President Trump and I had in-depth exchanges on China-US relations and international and regional dynamics. We both believe that the China-US relationship is the most important bilateral relationship in the world. We must make it work and never mess it up. Both China and the United States stand to gain from cooperation and lose from confrontation. Our two countries
What the fuck do we gain from fucking with your ass?
should be partners rather than rivals. President Trump and I also agreed to build a constructive China-US
The more that these two integrate, then the more dependent we really will be to China.
relationship of strategic stability to promote the steady, sound, and sustainable development of
Dumplings
China-US
are like
relations
fucking
and bring more peace,
jellyfish. Bro, I
prosperity,
swear to God
and
about that
progress
shit.
to the world.
尊敬的特朗普总统先生、女士们、先生们、朋友们，纵观中美关系发展历程，能不能做到相互尊重、和平共处、合作共赢？
Well, you know what that
Sure,
says, Smart Mouth? That says that we're too lax on our fucking security then with our technology.
关系能否稳定发展的关键所在。当今世界变乱交织，中美关系承载着两国17亿多人民的福祉。
Now, wait a minute, Sambo. My grandpa told me always eat that cat. He said, I'll show you a woman that you'll never be able to run away if you eat that cat. You don't eat that cat, I can show you a woman that can be taken. That's what Papa always told me anyway.
关乎世界80多亿人民的利益，我们应当共同扛起这个历史重任，推动中美关系这艘巨轮
Oh, my bad.
沿着正确的航道平稳前行。
Honorable President Donald J. Trump, ladies and gentlemen, friends, looking back at the course of China-US relations, whether or not we could have mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation is the key to whether the relationship can advance steadily. The world today is changing and turbulent. China-US relations concern the well-being of the over 1.7 billion people of both countries and affect the interests of the over 8 billion people of the world. Both sides should rise up to this historic responsibility and steer the giant ship of China-US relations forward, steadily and in the right direction.
最后，我提议为中美两国
Hey,
发展
they
繁
eat
荣
some
和人
weird
民幸
shit
福，
though, man.
为
They really do. They eat some weird shit. It just shows how bad they've had it over the years.
中美关系的美好未来和两国人民的友谊，为特朗普总统以及在
Look,
座
they
的
got
各位
rats.
朋友的
Rats
健
out
康
on a stick, pimp. You ever
Ganbei.
seen that?
Now, please join me in a toast to the development and prosperity of China and the United States and the well-being of our people, to the bright future of China-US relations and the friendship between the two peoples, and to the health of President Trump and all the friends present. Cheers.
干杯！
Cheers.
I do like them columns, though. I will say that.
I'm just gonna
No.
say it. Older
No.
men are in a completely different league right now, and their secret is Blue Chew Gold. Blue Chew.
谢谢习近平主席。
They're more up.
Thank
in,
you, President
They're
Xi.
more up towards Alaska and stuff like that. I know they're out there now. I have seen Russian warships. I will say that.
现在
Or
请
I
特朗
shouldn't
普
say ships, warship. I think it was a spy ship.
总统致辞。
Next, a toast by President
Hell, that
Trump.
motherfucker's right off the coast of Florida, or it was the last time I knew of.
Well, thank you very much. This is a great honor. It was a fantastic day. And in particular, I want to thank President Xi, my friend, for this magnificent welcome. And it really was a magnificent welcome like none other. And for so graciously hosting us on this very historic state visit. We had extremely positive and productive conversations and meetings today with the Chinese delegation earlier. And this evening is another cherished opportunity to discuss among friends some of the things that we discussed today, all good for the United States and for China. And it was a great honor to be with you. Please.
感谢习近平主席。今天我们度过了非常美好的一天。首先要感谢习近平主席这一盛大的欢迎，那么也非常感谢在这一次历史性的国事访问当中非常慷慨地接待了我的代表团。那么今天早些时候，我们跟中方进行了富有成效以及具有建设性的对话。那今天晚上将是我们另外的一次机会，能够共同再次讨论我们今天早些时候已经讨论到的一些问题，以及我们的共同利益，以及我们如何能够为全人类塑造更好、更安全的未来。
The relationship between the American and Chinese people goes all the way back to America's founding. The first American consul to China, Samuel Shaw, arrived on the first American trading ship to reach these shores in 1784. The Chinese merchants had a name for the Americans. They called their visions the New People. 2.5 centuries later, that first connection has grown into one of the most consequential relationships in world history.
美国人民和中国人民之间的友谊可以追溯到美国的建国之初。那么，美国的第一任驻华大使萨缪尔·肖先生在1784年乘坐第一艘美国的商船到达了中国的沿岸。当时中国的商人是这样称呼到来的美国访客，他们将当时到来的美国访客称为一个崭新的民族。250年后的今天，这一个当初的友谊已经慢慢的演变成为当今世界当中最举足轻重的关系之一。
From the beginning, our citizens have shared a deep sense of mutual respect. Founding Father Benjamin Franklin published the sayings of Confucius in his colonial newspaper. And today,
that heroin was a motherfucker.
Recognizing that ancient Chinese sage is carved into the face of the United States Supreme Court very proudly.
从一开始，我们两国之间的人民就已经有深厚的相互的尊重。美国的国父本杰明·富兰克林曾经在他的殖民报纸当中刊登了孔子的《论语》，而今天在美国最高法院建筑物的门前，可以说有一个雕刻，这个雕刻就是为了向中国的这一名古代的圣人进行致敬。
The appreciation ran in both directions. Chinese admirers of President George Washington gifted a stone tablet honoring his memory to adorn the Washington Monument. It bears the words of a Chinese official who called the great general and statesman a hero among men.
这一种欣赏是相互的。 那么许多中国人非常崇敬乔伟大的将军和政治家。
Apparently, you can go from 0 to a complete site in just a single prompt with Wix Harmony. I don't know if this is going to be possible or Vibe.
The tremendous talent and potential of our two people. Chinese workers helped lay the railroad tracks that connected our Atlantic coast to the Pacific. American travelers to China helped spread literacy and modern medicine. And at the request of China's ambassador, it was President Theodore Roosevelt who provided the funds to establish President Xi's alma mater, Tsinghua University.
在过去几百年当中，这种相互的尊敬已经成为了一段全新的关系。
As allies in World War II, President Franklin Roosevelt's mentions of the brave people of China, that's what they were, drew loud cheers in his speeches in the United States, and everybody loved what he had to say, just as many Chinese now love basketball and blue jeans. Chinese restaurants in America today outnumber the 5 largest fast food chains in the United States, all combined. That's a pretty big statement.
那么，作为2战期间的盟国，罗斯福总统在美国的多次演讲当中
benefits both of our nations. The American and Chinese people share much in common. We value hard work. We value courage and achievement. We love our families and we love our countries. Together, we have the chance to draw on these values to create a future of greater prosperity, cooperation, and happiness, and peace for our children. We love our children. This region and the world, it's a special world with the two of us united and together.
那么至于未来，为我们的子孙、为本地区以及全世界造福。
Thank you again, President Xi, for this beautiful welcome. And tonight it is my honor to extend an invitation to you and Madam Peng to visit us at the White House this September 24th. And we look forward to it. And I'd now like to raise a glass and propose a toast to the rich and enduring ties between the American and Chinese people. It's a very special relationship. And I want to thank you again. This has been an amazing period of time. Thank you, President Xi.
那么再一次感谢习主席，感谢这一美好的欢迎。那么今天晚上，我也想借此机会向您以及
Thank you, everybody.
感谢。
Thank you, everybody.
感谢。
Oh, he did. They got him.
Hi, I'm Dylan, co-founder of Spot and Tango. Unkibble is an entirely new category of dog food.
I wonder how they go about.
Let's get right to Aisha Hosni.
Sure that he ain't been poisoned or nothing. They've got to keep an eye on that shit.
Who has all the details from that face-to-face, Aisha.
Hey, Todd and Carly, good morning to you. And we just got a readout from the White House on this big bilateral meeting between the two presidents. So I'll read a couple of notes that I've taken away from this statement. They talked about expanding market access for American businesses into China. Remember, the president brought this delegation of 16 CEOs from different business and tech backgrounds. They also talked about wanting...
They do steal everything. That's a fucking T-top off a fishing boat. I'm not even bullshitting.
more progress on stopping the flow of fentanyl. That's something the president brought up. Now, the Chinese purchases of American agricultural products was also something that was brought up in these discussions. And President Xi expressed interest in purchasing more American oil to reduce China's dependence on the strait in the future. That's a really big takeaway. So we're going to focus.
That's a T-top off a boat. That is a T-top design for like a center console.
On that as well. Also, both countries agree that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And after reading through this readout, there was really nothing in there that said that China was going to help pressure Iran in any way to ending the conflict. We were wondering if that was going to come up. It has been an incredibly busy day for the president, touring around all over Beijing. The president began his day with a visit to the Great Hall of People at the heart of the city, where he was greeted by President Xi. The delegation heard the national anthem along with a 21-gun salute, and the two leaders then had a bilateral meeting, and the president commented on his relationship with Xi. Watch.
You and I have known each other now for a long time. In fact, the longest relationship of our two countries any president and president has had, and that's to me an honor.
Look right there. Tell me that ain't about the same design of what they were standing under, except for smaller. Oh, shit. My bad.
So once the bilateral...
We've gotten along. When there were difficulties, we worked it out. I would call you and you would call me. And whenever we had a problem, people don't know, whenever we had a problem, we worked that out very quickly. We're going to have a fantastic future together.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Yeah, we're going to have a fantastic future together. I'd like to fucking put Chinese police stations, secret ones, you know, all over the United States so we can spy on you. Hey, let's talk about that fucking balloon that you motherfuckers mapped out the whole damn hemisphere over here with.
So once the bilateral was over, we actually got several statements from the Chinese side almost immediately. This is a not so thinly veiled warning from the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokeswoman on Taiwan, the issue of Taiwan, which, by the way, gets a ton of its defense weapons from the U.S. This is what she wrote. President Xi stressed to President Trump that the Taiwan question is the most important issue in China-U.S. relations. If it is handled properly, the bilateral relationship will enjoy overall stability. Now, here's the moment a reporter shouts a question at the two leaders about Taiwan, and watch what happens next.
How are your talks, sir?
It's great.
Did you talk about Taiwan?
Great place. Incredible. China's beautiful.
Yeah, neither wanted to say anything about it. Meanwhile, Iran looming in the background as a report overnight indicates that Iran may have taken a vessel near the Strait of Hormuz. While President Trump says he does not need Xi's help in ending the conflict, administration officials did go into this bilat saying that they were hoping to see China play a role, considering that it buys the largest amount of Iranian crude.
Oh, I guarantee you.
We've made
Trump
the
said,
argument
look,
to the Chinese.
Look, if you fucking want this blockade to stop, where you can go up in there, tell them motherfuckers to give us the uranium.
I hope it's compelling. The Chinese have ships stuck in the Persian Gulf because setting up a system that says we're going to let certain ships through but others not, it's easier said than done. It's a huge source of instability. It threatens to destabilize Asia more than any other part of the world. It's in their interest to resolve this. We hope to convince them to play a more active role.
And remember, there were a huge contingency of CEOs that were present at the ceremony today. We saw them leaving the bilateral early, meaning that the president did what he said. He was going to make his first ask to Xi to open up China to these companies. Of course, the guys, they want to do business in China as long as it's safe to do business in China. The state banquet is up next. And then the first interview with Sean Hannity airs later tonight. We will find out much more directly from the president on what he got out of President Xi today.
Yeah, which
Back
will
to you.
certainly be something to watch, and a great wrap up, Aisha, of what's taking place so far. Notable and very interesting to hear what is coming out of China, with a heavy emphasis on Taiwan, and the United States focusing, of course, on the economy. Iran and fentanyl not mentioning Taiwan at all. But the president, as you just played, said that the meeting went great. And now it's on to dinner time coming up pretty soon with the state banquet. Aisha Hasmi live for us 12 hours ahead in Beijing. Aisha, thank you so much. Let's bring in the director of the Heritage Foundation's AIDS Study Center, Jeff Smith. Jeff, thank you so much.
Let's watch this shit right here.
You need to spend thousands up front to fix your cooling and heating system. Right now, we can get you a brand new high-efficiency heat pump system.
There has been an 80-year cover-up of the existence of non-human intelligent life, covered up by elements of the U.S. government. But this past Friday, the first tranche of evidence was released to the public.
And the evidence is absolutely clear that there is some form of life with advanced technology. They're all over the place.
But the people involved in gatekeeping this information don't think the public can handle the truth. People have had their lives threatened. A lot of them are afraid to come forward and tell the White House what they know. And this has been kept from even sitting presidents. And I've interviewed high-level intelligence officials and government officials, and there have been UAP crashes over the years. And in some cases,
I mean, really, who gives a fuck? Why is it so far-fetched to think that there's other life out there? I mean, this universe is so big, dude. I mean, come on. You'd have to be a fucking retard to think that we're the only things in the whole fucking universe.
crashed crafts had the bodies of non-humans in them.
And now we have people on ships seeing these things enter the water. It's seen
You ever
enough
seen
times
some of
under
the
enough
shit
different
that came out
conditions.
from the bottom of the ocean? If that don't look like a fucking alien, I don't know what does.
We just have to accept that it's real.
So what exactly is inside this report?
We have so many sightings, even access to
That's probably
materials.
it,
And there's a number of
To be honest
files,
with you.
reports, video, and still images that were declassified. And the most notable piece of evidence in there is this.
So I have so many questions. You're probably familiar with this NASA report. They essentially say that they don't believe that these UAPs are aliens. Why would NASA be lying? Is there a reason why this stuff hasn't been captured on like an iPhone? Are they currently living amongst us? And then do you trust the Trump administration to release all of the available information?
I think eventually we'll get to that moment that we've all only seen in movies where a sitting president steps to a microphone and tells the world we're not alone in the universe.
This is super interesting to me. My team give me this report to show me how many of you that watch this show subscribe.
Let's go.
National conversation at an unprecedented level. And it led to President Trump issuing this directive in the middle of February, super unprecedented historic directive, instructing federal agencies to start declassifying evidence they have of non-human intelligent life and UAP. And then that process began this past Friday. The first tranche of evidence was released to the public.
And during the process of producing this documentary, who did you speak to?
I got access to the highest levels of the government, military, and intelligence community. My interview subjects range from Secretary Rubio, who's also our national security advisor now, White House National Security Council members, Navy fighter pilots, admirals, generals, a former Secretary of Defense, the leadership of all the recent classified U.S. government UAP investigations. Every single person is extremely credible.
That's what I'm saying.
Hal was one of my interview subjects. Hal's
ass shit. Look at that wolffish that they got. That looks like a fucking alien.
One of the most senior scientists to work on this topic for the U.S. government in classified projects. And him and all these other people interviewed, they had a lot of information they could legally share over the years, but they were always discouraged from doing so. And they never really had the opportunity to comfortably do it. No one wanted to be the one guy out on a limb saying something extraordinary on CNN or Fox or 60 Minutes and then being subject to the pushback and the ridicule. And so when I realized that, I started socializing a plan for how to step out of the shadows arm in arm with safety in numbers.
I'll pick up on that point there where you talked about safety in numbers. How he mentioned you there. You're part of the documentary. I saw you as well in the trailer of the documentary. What is your background and what reference point are you drawing on to speak on the subject of UAPs and UFOs, etc.?
I'm a quantum physicist. I worked for the National Security Agency for various organizations in the intelligence community like CIA and so on. And so as part of my technical work, I was also a consultant, chief science advisor to Robert Bigelow of Bigelow Aerospace. He's really quite a titan. I mean, he has 2 space stations orbiting the Earth. So anyway, those people who are in the space business and they're moving out into space, they just can't help but wondering, what are we going to run into when we get out there? As a science advisor to him, it turned out that the Defense Intelligence Agency came forward and said, we need to find out really what's going on in this so-called UAP area.
So you worked with someone called Robert Bigelow.
He's the guy who knows everything about what is possible.
I want to know this though, right? This diary of a CEO has been putting out stuff about the war, right? And now all of a sudden he's done switched gears in the midst of this fucking confrontation that's going on. Something don't sit right with me when they do that shit.
In terms of aerospace technology and anything that would be in the air or space, simply put. One day, one of his colleagues comes to his office, pulls him into a skiff, and shows him a video that Air Force security guards took over a nuclear weapon site. It was a triangle UAP hovering over a nuclear weapon site. This colleague said, please tell me this is one of ours, like one of our black projects, some advanced cutting edge technology that's ours. And he knew instinctively.
I'm going to tell you right now, that Skinwalker Ranch, now that kind of intrigues me, but this shit here is a distraction. That's all this is.
It was not. That set him down a rabbit hole. He's like, there's got to be some office somewhere in the intelligence community that handles UFOs. So he went all over trying to him and his colleague. They couldn't find one. So then they determined they were just going to start a UAP program. That program they started was called OSAP. They hired all the team, for example, Hal. And that program started in 2008 and got a lot of pushback behind the scenes because it turned out when they looked all over the intelligence community to see if there was another UFO program and didn't think there was, turns out there was one. And there was a deeply hidden program referred to as the Legacy Program. And it had been operating in the shadows since the 40s, outside of congressional oversight, outside of the oversight of the White House, completely,
completely hidden away. Yeah.
As hidden as a program can be. And so they started pushing back behind the scenes against everyone involved in OSAP because they didn't want anyone else looking into this, right? Started to cause a lot of bureaucratic issues for them, red tape issues, and ultimately OSAP lost its funding in 2010, despite the fact that it was looking into very real issues like UAP over our nuclear weapon sites. It shut down in 2010.
Why do you think it shut down?
They were dealt these bureaucratic hurdles behind the scenes by people involved in the Legacy Program, people who just caused problems and prevented funding. And it's a lot of, it's a big bureaucracy. People can do things behind the scenes to prevent funding from coming through for programs. And so ultimately they lost their funding in 2010. And then Jay Stratton and other people involved, they were continuing to look into this because they didn't want this serious national security concern to go, uninvestigated, right?
So that's how somebody like me gets pulled in. They say, okay, these pilots are out there and they suddenly see craft coming out of the ocean and making right angle turns at 6G or whatever. And they say, oh my God, this is way beyond our physics. So I and other physicists sort of dug into, what could be responsible for this. And we actually found that just like we use so-called Maxwell's equations and electromagnetic stuff for everything we do in electromagnetics, we have Einstein's equations and general relativity for, black holes and all that kind of stuff. But it turns out if you could engineer those, you would actually get the same effects that people were observing with these UAP craft. So we think we've come up with, what it is about the science of it. It's just that we don't have the engineering to do it.
Do you believe in UAPs?
I absolutely believe in UAPs because I've been exposed to data about them.
Whoa, man, amazing car.
So what if they had, because the Earth has a magnetic pull, right? And we know what you do when you flip magnets over. I wonder if they've come up with something to reverse that.
When did you become a millionaire?
What is this for?
We're trying to get advice for the...
A more specific question would be,
everything's
do you
a
believe in aliens?
mathematical equation.
So a number of the people I interviewed went on the record.
Let's go check him out.
Let's get right to Aisha Hasni, who has all the details from that face-to-face. Aisha.
Welcome in, everyone. I hope you guys are doing great wherever you're watching from today. I'm filming this on the morning of May 14th. All information is up to date as of May 14th, and we have a serious situation to discuss, and that is Iranian commandos appear to have hijacked a ship in the Strait of Hormuz. They are sailing it back to Iran. Possible hostages are involved. At the same time, Iranian submarines are flooding into the strait, which we have previously discussed. Now we have more details. We got a lot of updates about what's going on. This is a very, very serious situation. Possible U.S. fighter jets in the air as well. So we're going to break it all down. Before we get started, as always, please make sure to like and subscribe. Totally free. Huge boost to the channel. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. How do you want to see the world respond to Iran hijacking a ship? Should the U.S. military go in strong and fast and end this once for all? Let me know in the comments below. Hit the notification bell. All notifications turned on. You miss a thing. And then Instagram, David_Hookstead, XD Hookstead. That's where you can find me on social media. My DMs are wide open. Reach out with whatever you got. And as you can see today, switching it up, no hat. Let me know in the comments if you like the no hat look or if you want to see the hat come back. Now, let's get into it. So right here, breaking news. The United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations reports that unauthorized personnel boarded a vessel anchored 38 nautical miles northeast of Fujairah and are now directing it toward Iranian national waters. So you can see right here, it appears they hijacked a ship that was somewhere near the UAE. They have hijacked the ship and they are taking it back to Iran, sailing it back to Iran. We do not know how many people were on this ship when the IRGC commandos took it. We do not know if shots were fired. We do not know if anyone was hurt. We do not know if anyone was killed. Obviously, we are praying that that is not the case, that nobody was seriously hurt or killed. But what we now know, according to the UK MTO, is that a ship has been hijacked by the Iranians, most likely IRGC commandos, black operations of the Iranian side. And remember, they just tried to put their spies, a commando sabotage team, into Kuwait. And that resulted in a massive gunfight with Kuwaiti Defense Forces and a Kuwaiti soldier being hit. Now they are hijacking a ship and sailing it back to Iran, possibly with hostages on board. And I want to make this point. Actions like these are what you get when the enemy feels emboldened. When the enemy feels like there's no real consequences anymore for their actions, they are going to go up the escalation ladder, trying to invade Kuwait, hijacking a ship, routinely bombing the UAE. They haven't faced any severe consequences during the ceasefire, and now they feel they can get away with hijacking a ship. In my personal opinion, you have to respond militarily, and you have to respond with extreme, harsh consequences. Find out where the IRGC assault team launched from and bomb it. Take it out. Eliminate it. You don't have any other option. Otherwise, they will continue to hijack more ships. They will continue to take more hostages. This situation that is developing as of this morning with the hijacking of the ship cannot go unanswered. And on that point, following the hijacking of the ship,
I already knew, Smart Mouth, that they were going to do this type of shit. They're holding them people hostage anyway. There's no different than them boarding that boat and taking it than them holding them in the strait, except for maybe these guys that get some fucking fresh food. Maybe.
A KC-135 Stratotanker is in the air over the Gulf, and it is believed that it is likely refueling U.S. fighter jets that are now in or over where the hijacking occurred, possibly signaling that we could be getting ready to bomb something. They could also just be monitoring the hijacked vessel, following it to see where it docks in Iran. They don't, possibly to launch some kind of rescue operation or figure out where the attack
armed is over pirates, somebody that they can kind of combat with. When the military goes to take over them, a couple armed guys ain't gonna stop them. They just gonna get killed.
Originated from and then bomb that. But we now know Iran has hijacked a ship, and this is incredibly serious. At the same time, I'm going to put this up on the screen from Fox News. Iran says its small subs deployed to Strait of Hormuz is experts explain vulnerable to detection. So right here, we briefly touched on this on a video the other day. Now we have more details. It says Iran says it has deployed small submarines to act as an invisible guardian of the Strait of Hormuz amid a series of rejected peace talks between Tehran and the U.S., according to reports. The deployment claim came as analysts said that the Strait said that although the Iranian Ghadir-class mini-subs could threaten U.S. naval forces, the vessel's limited range and firepower and endurance would blunt any real strategic impact. The submarine deployment was highlighted by Bloomberg and first reported by the semi-official Tasnim news agency. Rear Admiral Shamran Irani, commander of Iran's Navy, said that his forces deployed its light.
If I was Trump, I would just strike the fucking Strait of Hormuz right through there and drop bombs down in the water. Not around none of the big ships and shit, but anywhere where I could drop a bomb where it wouldn't take out a regular shipping vessel, I'd just do it.
Submarines
I'd make
referred
these
to as
motherfuckers scared to
dolphins
move them
of
subs
the
in and
Persian
out.
Gulf. And those are these submarines right here. So they're little submarines. They look like this. They're nothing like our submarines. They are diesel operated. And if we go down here, though, these submarines do have some launch capabilities. I'm going to skip ahead. So right here,
the industry's best zero turn just got even better. Buy a new Grasshopper zero turn loader now to get sure.
This is video of them launching missiles from these submarines that they could use. Right there, another one up. So this is a capability the submarine has where they could launch these things at our ships or commercial shipping vessels. Now, at the same time, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi released a statement after they hijacked a ship and after they deployed their submarines with missile launch capabilities, saying, "We have created no obstacles in the Strait of Hormuz. It is America that has imposed the blockade." That is downright false. The Iranians have made it clear, if you don't listen to us and you don't pay us money to cross the Strait of Hormuz, we will blow your ship up. We will bomb your ship. We'll hijack your ship. We'll shoot it up. So the Iranians are lying through their teeth right now about what is actually happening in the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, we have more reports of explosions in Erbil, Iraq. That is the location of U.S. military forces and the Kurds. So as of May 14th or late May 13th, we had reports of explosions going down in Erbil, which is one of the locations of U.S. troops. Furthermore, remember how we talked about how Iran had flown their planes
What'd
to
y'all do to
Pakistan
him, Rick?
to hide them so that the U.S. wouldn't hit them? It says right here, these are Iranian C-130s modified with electronic.
Bro, in my opinion, he deletes his channel like that because he buys all them fucking subs and shit. And he's trying to keep them from being able to be tracking him. So when he comes back, he'll have a name change. It's weird.
Warfare pods.
If that motherfucker would quit spending money on trying to convince people he's this great, awesome YouTuber, he could have bought something besides a raggedy ass Subaru. It sounded like it fucking was
Pakistan, as the Pakistanis are giving the Iranians refuge and keeping their planes safe and off the battlefield so the United States cannot hit them. All right, next up, we have B-2 bombers in the air running a training mission into Europe. We have some audio right here. Let's listen.
Requesting to orbit at 4330 north, 1850 west, still 2000.
So that right there is radio chatter of B-2 U.S. stealth bombers in the air running simulated strikes, taking off from Whitman Air Force Base in the United States, going to Europe, and they are being towed right here. I believe this is a KC-46 Pegasus refueling tanker that is also up in the air in support of the B-2 stealth bombers on their training mission. And then right here, we have a very interesting situation. Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, actually visited the UAE during the war at some point in March, which is huge, that the Israeli prime minister would go to the UAE, that the UAE would welcome in. Now, the UAE is denying this visit to happen, but the Israelis, including the office of the prime minister, are saying that it did. So right there, very interesting. Goes to show the Middle East is changing right in front of our very own eyes. And then lastly, right here, President Trump currently is in China, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio is with him, and he did touch on briefly the situation. Let's listen.
We've made the argument to the Chinese, and I hope it's compelling, and they'll have a chance to do something about it at the United Nations later this week when there's a resolution just condemning Iran on what they're doing with the Straits. Look, there's three things.
America said, yeah, it runs good. And I'm thinking, nah, bitch, it does good to run.
The Chinese have ships stuck in the Persian Gulf because setting up a system that says we're going to let certain ships through, but others not, it's easier said than done. And you saw a not Chinese flag vessel, but it was a Chinese cargo, got hit over the weekend. I'm sure Iran didn't do it deliberately, but they did it. It happened. And so that's why these Chinese ships are stuck in there.
So right there, Marco Rubio explaining the dynamics of working with China, which is, of course, funding and arming the Iranians. And Iran even blew up one of their ships. As Rubio pointed out, they probably didn't know it was a Chinese ship when they blew it up. So I'll pull this off the screen. So as of me filming this on the morning of May 14th, we now know Iran has hijacked a ship. It is a serious situation. We are going to continue to monitor it the best we can. We have B-2 stealth bombers in the air running simulated training strikes. Iran is flooding the Strait of Hormuz with submarines. So we got a lot of things to follow. As always, guys, let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know if you like the hair, if you want to see the hat back. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all next time.
Appreciate you, Dave, but nobody gives a fuck about
guys,
that hair.
after years.
What about that fucking
Let's get right to Aisha
nuclear
Hosni,
boat
who
that's
has-
missing from down Russia that day sunk? Holy shit, how are we getting back to that shit? I can't stand to watch that again.
Stating that they know from their own personal experiences that there have been UAP crashes over the years that have been recovered by elements of the U.S. government, and in some cases, the crashed crafts had the bodies of non-humans in them. And numerous people I interviewed went on the record saying that. And keep in mind, everyone I interviewed only shared what they lawfully could. There was a line they couldn't cross. Everyone I interviewed is aware of classified information they can't talk about, but they went right up to the line and made it clear that there had been recoveries of non-human bodies. A couple of people actually testified under oath to Congress saying the same thing.
Why wouldn't they be able to talk about it publicly?
Well, when you're involved in certain programs, you sign certain agreements that prevent you from sharing specific information.
Highly classified programs. And of course, the big concern is, okay, whatever we might learn about these kind of craft and so on, our adversaries are out there, and there have been crashes in Russia, crashes in China. And so if we reveal what we're learning about the subject area and, said it publicly, then it might help some potential adversary get a step ahead. So that's why it's all just kept really close in.
So a saying that I heard often from my interview subjects: you can't tell your friends without telling your enemies. Meaning you can't tell the public what we know and don't know without also telling China and Russia what we know and don't know. And giving them that information might give them a competitive advantage. And the obvious question anyone would ask when hearing that is then, well, okay, so what's shifted? Why is that no longer the leading thought? Secrecy is best. And the answer is because the U.S. is in a really high stakes race, a technology race against these adversaries to reverse engineer technology of non-human origin. And the secrecy around it in the U.S. since the 40s has created a scenario where the scientific community and academia don't even know it's real. They don't even know it's a valid area of inquiry.
Don't even believe it's real.
Yeah, I mean, the smartest kids graduating at MIT this year, they are not thinking that this is something they can put their brain power towards.
So come back to the question, do you believe in aliens?
I 100% believe that non-human intelligent life is here and has been here for a long time.
When you say here, do you mean
Earth.
currently living amongst us?
I don't know about the living amongst us part.
Oh, there's a couple.
I don't know about that, but
We'll rule it out.
there's UAP activity being reported on a daily basis by commercial airline pilots to the FAA, by Navy fighter pilots off the East Coast being reported, up the military chain of command, and on top of that, regular activity over our nuclear weapons sites inside the United States. It's happening on a regular basis on the nuclear sites and on a daily basis in commercial air travel space.
UAP have come over nuclear missile sites.
Y'all want to check in on my crazy cousin?
And so,
or y'all just
when
wanna
something
let
like
him
that
be?
happens, you just got
What's
to
up,
take
Drew?
it seriously.
And the technology that they're displaying is technology that no humans have.
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code.
Not anybody.
This is
And again, there has been some crashes, and in those crashes, there have been the bodies of non-humans.
How do we know that?
God.
How do we know that in those crashes they've recovered bodies of non-humans?
The whistleblowers basically coming forward from the program.
So the basis of that evidence is that some people have said it.
At this point, until previously classified information regarding crashes and recoveries is declassified,
Mhm.
until that happens, the best we could hope for is credible people putting their reputation on the line to tell you this is what's been happening.
Did someone during your process of making the documentary who had seen non-alien, non-human life, non-human intelligence tell you that?
Yeah.
Who was that?
A number of people, but notably, Jay Stratton, who we just talked about.
Yes, right.
Who co-founded OSAP, and then became the director of the UAP Task Force, the largest whole government investigation of UAP ever.
What did he say?
He went on the record in the film saying that he's seen non-human beings and non-human craft with his own eyes. That was the farthest he could go at that point.
Hey, what about
Why did
that?
he say
What
he
about
couldn't-
that fucking black chick that posts on Instagram? I can't remember her name, but she doesn't look fucking human for sure.
Go further.
But she got some kind of weird disease.
He had a situation that he was involved
But I
in
thought it was
that
funny when everybody was talking about the aliens, she's like, everybody looking for aliens. I'm right here. I had always thought, damn, that bitch looked like a fucking alien.
for
I
a
just
few
thought it
reasons
was funny.
he just wasn't comfortable talking about it yet, and some of it I think he just wanted to make sure he legally could. Now, going back to credibility, like take a guy like Jay saying that, when Jay retired a few years back, he was part of the senior executive services of the federal government. That's a level less than none of all federal employees ever reach. It's the equivalent of a 2-star admiral or general. Very, very senior, very trusted, cleared at a very high level. He had worked with naval intelligence in a senior capacity. He had worked with the CIA. He had worked with the Defense Intelligence Agency as the head of air and space warfare. He's a super serious, credible guy.
Yeah.
And he's putting his reputation on the line to share this information to the extent that he legally could and comfortably could.
And when you asked him why the world doesn't know this stuff, in his view, what would he say?
There's a lot of reasons. I mean, certainly the idea that we can't tell our friends without telling our enemies has been a driver. To recap the reasons for secrecy, I actually believe it's better to kind of start from the beginning. When in 1947 there was a crash at Roswell of non-human origin, and RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. Yeah,
Right.
and then this is the image of their cover-up story, trying to show a weather ballooner. Yeah, so multiple people in my film go on the record saying the Roswell crash really happened. Technology of non-human origin and non-human bodies were recovered. If you put yourself in the shoes of the military and government at that point, like put yourself in Truman and Eisenhower's shoes, you're just coming out of World War II. The world was just chaos for a very long time. It's finally starting to settle down. You can't exactly step to the microphone and tell America that there's a new threat that we know nothing about and we can't protect you from. They're far advanced. What's the advantage
How
of
do we know
that?
we
So
can't be
secrecy
protected from 'em?
became the plan at that point. And they had more questions than answers. So everyone I've talked to who gave me context explained that the plan for secrecy went in motion there. Let's investigate. Let's find out more about what we don't know before we tell the American people. That was quickly followed by the Cold War era. And we learned that Russia also had retrieved technology of non-human origin. And so we knew we were in a technology race. So then the idea of can't tell your friend without telling your enemy ruled the day. So now the Cold War mentality, led to more secrecy. And as a security wrapper for this program that it started, they created the stigma in the late 40s, early 50s, this cultural stigma, this idea that you're crazy if you look into this topic, you're wacky, you'll have your reputation ruined, you'll have your career ruined.
There was actually a CIA meeting where people got together and said, okay, in order to not have people be pursuing this area, let's go out of our way to spread what we would call now disinformation.
Basically the most effective disinformation campaign in the history of the U.S. government, because it got into our culture. Some movies were funded that made aliens seem silly and the idea of life from elsewhere seem ridiculous, and that got compounded over the years. And then we got to the point where we were like, just like a few years ago, where the average person just thinks it's not real. The average scientists, academia, they think it's conspiracy stuff. It's nonsense. It's silly. There was no advantage for elected leaders to get in front of this, or for military members to, speak up about what they learned or saw. It would be a career ruiner.
What's up?
And that started to shift several years back when.
Yeah, Grizz, if aliens are real, they could have been took us out a long time ago. If them motherfuckers can make crafts that do all that crazy shit, they could have fucked us up a long time ago.
Jay Stratton and Jim Lukaski, when they put together OSAP in 2010, and they started to go out there and collect data and get evidence, and they started to actually share it with the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee, and looking at classified data in a classified setting, people like Marco Rubio, who was the vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee at the time, started to realize,
there's something here.
Not only is there something here, but we've got a problem, right? There's a lot of UAP activity over these highly classified nuclear weapons sites. There's a lot at stake. We are in this, race with other nations, and the stigma has created a disadvantage for us. It's very hard to win a technology race when the majority of scientists don't know it's a valid area of inquiry, right?
Bro, people like Tesla and a few other ones that have created shit way ahead of their time said, I've been contacted when they were in their dreams. And that's how they come up with some of the shit that they did. You kind of got to take them people at value when they say something like that, right? I mean, you think this Nikola Tesla, I want to say he's the one that created wireless technology years ahead of time.
And do people think that there's one type of non-human intelligence that's visiting the Earth, or is there many, many types?
People who have been involved in recoveries have said
there are at least four separate types. Now, I have not had direct access to that, but I believe the people who I talked to.
4 different types of life.
4 different types of life, at least. Yeah.
And the people I've talked to, through the process of making the documentary, both on camera and off the record sources, and the people Hal's talked to.
How are you making a documentary about something that you ain't experienced firsthand, though? That's crazy.
Decades have said that there have been dozens of recoveries of crashed craft in the U.S. alone. Dozens of craft of non-human origin that either crashed organically or caused to crash and then recovered.
And have you spoken to people who, you talked about Jay, have you spoken to other people that have worked on these crashed crafts?
I've talked off the record with some people who are involved in recoveries. Mm-hmm. They would not go on camera to do interviews. Special forces people that would not go on camera to do interviews. I actually thought, I've mentioned this in another interview, but one I thought was going to do an interview, and then a couple days before sent me a message saying, after further consideration and long talks with my wife, I decided I'd be forfeiting my life if I participated in your interview. And I thought that was like very unsettling message to get, obviously, but also very specific word choice, forfeiting my life.
What did he know?
He was a very senior special forces guy who had told me he had been involved in multiple recoveries.
Yeah, smart
founders
and he
know
also
something most
he
people
said
miss.
it, man.
Get your domain name, even if
he said it. He said they come to me in a dream, and he had these visions. And when he would wake up, he'd have to get right to writing and putting it down. You know what I mean? So he didn't lose it.
You're not ready to launch your business. With Wix, you can grab yours now and then get.
That's what he told me.
Okay.
And I met him through some high-level intelligence people. early on in my process.
Bro, why do you think he stayed in that hotel room in New York? Why do you think that is? Because he was going to use that building because it was the right height and dimensions and all that. He had a bunch of stuff. Dude, if they would have just let him fucking go, there's no telling where we'd be at with society right now. They did it. They fucking held us back over that shit.
Got connected with the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee, and they had on their own learned the reality of the situation through the work of OSAP and then ATIP and then the UAP task force and through their own intelligence channels. Leaders on those committees wanted to educate the public about what they could lawfully about this, but they didn't really have a way to do it. It's such a complicated situation. It takes a while to explain it. You can't do it in like a 6-minute news hit on Fox or CNN or even like a 15-minute, 60-minute segment. You just can't do it. And no one wanted to be the one guy trying to do it. So when I started putting together the film and socializing this safe way for people to step forward, it also quickly became those people's plan for disclosure. That's why Secretary Rubio participated. That's why White House National Security Council members participated. It became, amongst the group of people who had learned the truth, it became the plan for disclosure, the way to bring this information out in a thoughtful way.
Do the presidents of the United States know about this stuff? Are they aware?
Historically, no.
Historically?
Yeah. And even Rubio says on camera that, historically, this has been kept from even sitting presidents.
Who would know then?
So a number of the people in my film break down who's involved in the legacy program. To put it simply, it's elements of the CIA, elements of the Air Force, elements of the Department of Energy, and a few major defense contractors. And they have the ability to access information from a number of federal agencies and branches of the military, but the primary leaders of this program are the CIA, the Air Force, the Department of Energy, and major defense contractors. And Rubio breaks down in the film the way our bureaucracy works. You could have career bureaucrats in positions of power at those organizations for decades, and they can just wait out sitting presidents. They can wait out sitting senators.
Sitting presidents is just temporary help that are going to come and go.
And that's what's been happening up until this point now. So the fact that Rubio had learned so much about the reality of the situation and the extent of the cover-up, and then ended up arguably the second most powerful guy in the world as our Secretary of State and our National Security Advisor at the same time, which has only happened once in U.S. history, Henry Kissinger for 2 years. Mm-hmm. No one else has ever had both those jobs at the same time. The fact that he ended up in that position of power and influence after learning the reality of the situation, and right as the age of disclosure is coming out and driving this national conversation, it really led to the current president, Trump, being informed about this in a way that no president has in a very long time.
So are you saying that the United States, the public are ready to even know that this exists? Because, they could tell us that they have recovered UAPs or aliens, whatever it might be, without telling us about the technology.
They could, and I think we're going to get to that point.
Yeah, I think they were trapped in this system that had grown up, and people behind the scenes working in the classified programs said, well, we don't know how the public is going to respond, so let's be safe and let's just keep it in-house.
Do you think Trump believes that there are aliens? Because I was looking at some of his quotes, and he said, well, I don't know if they're real or not. I don't have an opinion on it. I never talk about it. A lot of people do. A lot of people believe it.
Barack Obama said that aliens are real.
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that.
So aliens are real.
No, I don't have an opinion on it. I never talk about it. A lot of people do. A lot of people believe it. Do you believe it, Peter?
Well, the president can declassify anything that he wants to. So if you want to make an announcement,
I may get him out of trouble by declassifying.
One of the things that came out in the age of disclosure is that during Trump's first administration, his cabinet was briefed by the UAP task force, by Jay Stratton. And when he briefed them, he was told that they had asked for this briefing because they needed to be able to evaluate what the repercussions would be if Trump decided to step to the microphone and tell the world we're not alone in the universe. Obviously, he didn't end up deciding to do that then. However, in this new administration, He's got Rubio in the position of Secretary of State and National Security Advisor and fully aware of the situation. And that has given him the comfort to put this process in motion. There's certainly a disclosure process unfolding right now.
Obama said,
Smart Mouth, are you still in here? If you are, I'd like to ask you something. So what do you know about the red vision goggle glasses where people, I think it was red, and then they went to green because the red was scaring the shit out of people because they were able to see all kinds of different images and shit that they couldn't see with the naked eye. Have you ever heard anything about that?
In an interview that he did with Brian Tyler Cohen, when asked about aliens, Obama said, they're real, but I haven't seen them. They're not being kept at Area 51. There's no underground facility unless there's this enormous conspiracy and they hid it from the president of the United States. Now, that sounded to me like kind of sarcasm when he said they're real, but, and then explained that they're not real.
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in Area 51. There's no underground facility unless there's this enormous conspiracy and they hid it from the president of the United States.
So it would appear to me that Obama also doesn't know of any aliens.
I think Obama was largely kept in the dark. Yeah. I think he does know the base fact that we're not alone in the universe. And I actually think when he said they're real, I think he was
this was back that was just
that was his honest.
That was his honest, candid, genuine statement. I think when he then said they're not kept at Area 51, I think he's also being honest because none of my sources say that UAP and aliens are being kept at Area 51. They're being kept somewhere else. So I think he was being honest there. And I think when he made the comment of unless there's a giant conspiracy, if you watch the tape, he like sips his cup and raises his eyebrows. He said, I think he knows there's a giant conspiracy. That's the truth. The following day, Trump was asked about that on Air Force One, and he responded saying Obama revealed classified information and he shouldn't have said that. And
let me just play this little clip right here. I'm still going to try to find something more on it, but we'll play this little clip right here.
You want to hear something really fascinating?
Sure. So, night vision now, it's green. In the Vietnam War, the night vision goggles that they were issued were red light. Multiple people in the U.S. military that were using them were seeing what they're reporting as flying demons. There's an instance where they're flying these helicopters in Vietnam. It was a safe zone, no hostility. And then the gunner in the back just started shooting. And the pilot's like, what are you shooting at? This guy, he was like panicked and he's like sweating and like it looked like he was like seeing a demon.
Yeah.
And like, what are you shooting at? He's like, the demon. Apparently this giant winged demon creature was like flying at him. And then people on the ground in the jungles that were using it, they were also seeing like these demonic looking, freaky looking creatures. And so the military banned those night vision goggles.
What?
And they replaced them with green light.
You want to hear something really
fascinating? I don't know how true that is, but I just thought that was kind of interesting.
I think that's the truth.
Yeah.
I think presidents don't know and they're told not to talk about it.
Trump has started to release a lot of classified information around UAP and aliens. The first batch of that was released a couple of days ago. Right. What exactly is inside this report?
There was a number of files, reports, video, and still images that were declassified. This is information that previously had been classified or just never really made public. This was just the first tranche of what will be released. The most notable piece of evidence in there is an image, a still image from the 1972 Apollo mission. It's an image of a triangle, a seemingly triangle-shaped craft hovering above the moon and above the astronauts, and the image was taken from the lunar module. And the UAP task force looked into this image years ago and determined it was real. That seems to be the most piece of evidence in this tranche. But I will say this: Hal and I both have a lot of the same sources of information, and everyone we've talked to at various federal agencies has told us that when the president gave this directive in the middle of February for federal agencies to declassify evidence of non-human intelligent life and UAP, only a few engaged with it. They only gave a small percent of what they have. and they only had a couple weeks to do it.
One of the things I think I've always struggled with the idea of these
Here's what I have found on it. It said before white and green night vision goggles, there were military grade red night vision goggles using a chemical known as diazin. I probably didn't say that right. Used first during the Vietnam War and no other war after. Soldiers were going mad because they were seeing things, seeing unto the unseen realm. A report goes the gunner saw what he described as a flying demonic spirit chasing them in their Jeep, and he was shooting at them. But his buddies saw nothing, and he was shooting at nothing. Even when helicopter pilots using them were seeing UAPs flying around them as well. There was a cover-up, and it's very difficult to find anything on the internet. The military banned the production of diazin night vision goggles, and they are also illegal to have. Has anyone heard about this? Wouldn't be surprised if this post gets taken down. That's crazy.
Conspiracies is that I don't know why that information would necessarily fall into the hands of like government officials, because alien life forms or UAPs would be visible and would land in anyone's back garden. So you could imagine a world, especially in a world where we have, I don't know, like 8 billion iPhones roaming around. You can imagine a world where,
how would it be, or why would people think that it's out of the possibility? I think that this world is dimensions.
if there was some kind of UAP crash in my garden, it would be on TikTok within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Or if there really was,
someone got there with an iPhone. You're right.
There was that incident earlier in the year with those, were they drones in America? Flying
Jersey.
New
Jersey.
Yeah.
And that was on social media within minutes, and everyone was talking about it and looking at what they were. I don't know. I think in the modern world, because we have so many ways to capture high quality video, if there was something,
they were looking for radio
out there,
some
we
kind
would
of
have seen a
radioactive
very
material.
clear image of this thing by now.
Well, there's a
That's
lot.
why there's a lot that came out in these files, because over the years,
Oh,
our
I'm
sensor
sure he
systems
had
that the
some
pilots
stories.
have in their planes have gotten so much better. They've captured really.
How crazy is that? That our government is so fucking cheap that they'll ship radioactive material through FedEx. And then when the fucking package comes up missing, they'll spend millions using drones to try to track it down. It might have been plutonium. It was something crazy like that. But that's what
Astounding.
Does this
what
life
happened
want to
in
be
New
seen?
Jersey.
Do these aliens want us to know that they're?
I'd have to assume that given the level of quality of their technology, if they didn't want to be seen, we wouldn't be seeing them. So it seems like I would say there's evidence that for whatever reason, they're wanting to be seen.
Bro,
But
if
also,
y'all
like,
ever
my
get bored
personal
one
opinion-
day and want to watch something that will kind of make you go, what the fuck? Watch that missing 411, The Hunted.
Opinion is that
It's a retired police officer who's done like a bunch of research on people that's come up missing throughout the United States. That shit will fucking freak you out.
if someone answers that question, they're answering it through the lens of like how humans think, right? For all we know, we're ants to them. You don't hide from the ants. You walk around them. You don't even, but you also don't pay attention to them,
Based on their behavior from
Shit,
the
I pay
interviews you've
attention,
done,
ants, especially in fucking little piss
how do you
ants.
think
Them
they view
motherfuckers
us?
hurt.
I
Fucking
honestly
about.
feel like the dynamic is, we are very, very far below them on the food chain. Hal makes an analogy in the film. He says, the ants in your tree line in your backyard, they could be there for generations.
Mm.
You never think
No
about
shit.
them. You walk around them.
There's no fucking telling.
You're not hiding from them, but like they're there and you don't really care, right? But what happens if they evolve one day and out of nowhere they figured out how to get into your house and they beelined under your door and they're in your living room, right? We might have evolved technologically over the last 80 years since we cracked the atom so quickly that we're now, the equivalent of the ants showing up in their living room. Like all of a
Potential
sudden,
danger. Yeah.
all of a sudden, this warring species, this violent species, humans, we progressed so quickly. We went from no real technological progress for a very long time to cracking the atom and then figuring out nuclear technology and then continuing to increase, our nuclear technology development. And, we have this program that has been retrieving their crashed craft and trying to reverse engineer them. So we might be at that point where we're about to do what they do, and all of a sudden we are a problem. That might be the explanation of why they pay so much attention to our nuclear process. There's a lot of UAP activity, not only at the nuclear weapon sites all over the world, but sites involved in the process, the nuclear process, like uranium mines or refineries.
Is it,
it might just be we've gotten to the point where all of a sudden they have to.
In the Soviet Union, the UAP came over and actually started a launch of the Russian missiles.
I'll show you what the cover looks like. I don't think I can watch it, Deb. I think they'll get me, but I'll show you what the cover looks like. This is it right here. That movie right there. It is fucking crazy. It really is. It is fucking crazy. But it talks about people being abducted in places where water is, around rocks and all, in these state parks, and how it's just watch it. That's all I can tell you. It's fucking crazy. It's free on YouTube.
To start into a countdown process.
How do we know that?
By
What's up,
the intelligence community's access to information about it.
Every person we spoke to in Bielorussia said they saw a flying saucer on that day. For hours, it hovered over the nearby ballistic missile base. No one had touched any buttons. No one had entered any codes. And yet, as the UFO hovered over the base, the control panel showed the missiles were preparing to launch. For 15 agonizing seconds, the base lost control of its nuclear weapons.
Logically, I would think that unusual activity would happen around consequential sites.
Yes.
I'd be more surprised if there was really frequent unusual activity happening in my back garden, for example. But around highly consequential sites, one would expect there to be people flying things around.
Oh shit, I accidentally fucked this up. My bad. My bad.
Wish I would have known about this sooner. Definitely could have helped me in the past, but at least I can use it now. Yesterday, I saw my checking account was under $100 balance. And I know it's crazy, but...
Oh, what the fuck have I done?
Stating that they know from their own personal experiences that there have been UAP crashes over the years that have been recovered by elements of the U.S. government, and in some cases, the crashed crafts had the bodies of non-humans in them. And
I hate them long drives.
Went on the record saying that. And keep in mind, everyone I interviewed only shared what they lawfully could. There was a line they couldn't cross. Everyone I interviewed is aware of classified information. They can't talk. No one wanted to be the one guy trying to do it. So when I started putting together the film and socializing this safe way for people to step forward, it also quickly became those people's plan for disclosure. That's why Secretary Rubio participated. That's why White House National Security Council members participated. It became, amongst the group of people who had learned the truth, it became the plan for disclosure, the way to bring this information out in a thoughtful way.
Do the presidents of the United States know about this stuff? Are they aware?
Historically, no.
Historically?
Yeah. And even Rubio says on camera that, historically, this has been kept from even sitting presidents.
Who would know then?
So a number of the people in my film break down who's involved in the legacy program. To put it simply, it's elements of the CIA, elements of the Air Force, elements of the Department of Energy, and a few major defense contractors. And they have the ability to access information from a number of federal agencies and branches of the military, but the primary leaders of this program are the CIA, the Air Force, the Department of Energy, and major defense contractors. And Rubio breaks down in the film the way our bureaucracy works. You could have career bureaucrats in positions of power at those organizations for decades, and they can just wait out sitting presidents. They can wait out sitting senators.
Sitting presidents is just temporary help that are going to come and go.
And that's what's been happening up until this point now. So the fact that Rubio had learned so much about the reality of the situation and the extent of the cover-up, and then ended up arguably the second most powerful guy in the world as our Secretary of State and our National Security Advisor at the same time, which has only happened once in U.S. history. Henry Kissinger for 2 years. No one else has ever had both those jobs at the same time. The fact that he ended up in that position of power and influence after learning the reality of the situation, and right as the age of disclosure is coming out and driving this national conversation, it really led to the current president, Trump, being informed about this in a way that no president has in a very long time.
So are you saying that the United States don't think the public are ready to even know that this exists? Because, you know, they could tell us that they have recovered UAPs or aliens, whatever it might be, without telling us about the technology.
Deb, he's definitely got balance, right? Checks and balances. Just look around you. Everything is for a reason. And yeah, I do not believe that with all the atmosphere that's out there, it's just wasted with just us living here.
Technology.
They could, and I think we're going to get to that point.
Yeah, I think they were trapped in this system that had grown up, and people behind the scenes working in the classified programs said, well, you know, we don't know how the public is going to respond, so let's be safe and let's just.
Am I the only one that thinks that like our government ain't really supposed to control us and rule over our lives the way that they do?
Just keep it in-house.
Do you think Trump believes that there are aliens? Because I was looking at some of his quotes and he said, well, I don't know if they're real or not. I don't have an opinion on it. I never talk about it. A lot of people do. A lot of people believe it.
Barack Obama said that aliens are real.
Well, he ain't classified information.
One of the things I think I've always struggled with the idea of these kind of conspiracies is that I don't know why that information would necessarily fall into the hands of like government officials, because, you know, alien life forms or UAPs would be visible and would land in anyone's back garden. So you could imagine a world, especially in a world where we have, I don't know, like 8 billion phones roaming around. You could imagine a world where if there was some kind of UAP crash in my garden, it would be on TikTok within 5 minutes. Or if there really was,
someone got there with an iPhone. You're right.
You know, there was that incident earlier in the year with those, were they drones in America? Flying
Jersey,
yeah.
And that was on social media within minutes, and everyone was talking about it and looking at what they were. I don't know. I think in the modern world, because we have so many ways to capture high quality video, if there was something out there, we would have seen a very clear image of this thing by now.
Well, there's
That's why there's a lot that came out in these files, because over the years, our sensor systems that the pilots have in their planes have gotten so much better. They've captured really astounding.
Does this life want to be seen? Do these aliens want us to know that they're?
I'd have to assume that given the level of quality of their technology, if they didn't want to be seen, we wouldn't be seeing them. So it seems like I would say there's evidence that for whatever reason, they're wanting to be seen.
But also, like my personal opinion is that if someone answers that question, they're answering it through the lens of like how humans think, right? For all we know,
I know that,
you know,
but I'm just saying, I don't think we,
you know, you don't hide from the ants. You walk around them. You don't even, but you also don't pay attention to them. You know,
based on their behavior from the interviews you've done, how do you think they view us?
I honestly feel like the dynamic is, you know, we are very, very far below them on the food chain. You know, Hal makes an analogy in the film. He says, the ants in your tree line in your backyard, they could be there for generations. You never think about them. You walk around them. You're not hiding from them, but like they're there and you don't really care, right? But what happens if they evolve one day and out of nowhere, they figured out how to get into your house and they've beelined under your door and they're in your living room? Right? We might have evolved technologically over the last 80 years since we cracked the atom so quickly that we're now, you know, the equivalent of the ants showing up in their living room. Like all of a sudden, all of a sudden, this warring species, this violent species, humans, you know, we progressed so quickly. We went from no real technological progress for a very long time to cracking the atom and then figuring out nuclear technology and then continuing to increase, you know, our nuclear technology development. And, you know, we have this program that has been retrieving their crashed craft and trying to reverse engineer them. So we might be at that point where we're about to do what they do. And all of a sudden we are a problem. That might be the explanation of why they pay so much attention to our nuclear process. You know, there's a lot of UAP activity, not only at the nuclear weapon sites all over the world, but sites involved in the process, the nuclear process, like uranium mines or refineries.
Is it,
it might just be we've gotten to the point where all of a sudden they have to.
In the Soviet Union, the UAP came over and actually started a launch of the Russian missiles.
He knows that.
I mean, they actually forced the system to start into a countdown process.
How do we know that?
By the intelligence community's access to information about it.
So before this, what I would do is I would have, like, from my YouTube channel, I would have like a general PDF lead magnet, or sometimes I did a webinar, and the people that I would get coming in, they were curious, but they weren't really committed. So
Every person we spoke to in Belokorovice said they saw a flying saucer on that day. For hours, it hovered over the nearby ballistic missile base. No one had touched any buttons. No one had entered any codes. And yet, as the UFO hovered over the base, the control panel showed the missiles were preparing to launch. For 15 agonizing seconds, the base lost control of its nuclear weapons.
Logically, I would think that unusual activity would happen around consequential sites.
Yes.
I'd be more surprised if there was really frequent unusual activity happening in my back garden, for example. But around highly consequential sites, one would expect there to be people flying things around there, spying. You know what people are like with cameras these days. They want to take photos of anything interesting. They hang around police stations and army barracks.
Right.
So logically, I would assume that there would be an increased probability of strange activity in the sky above a nuclear site.
Well, in fact, there was a group of people in the intelligence community who recognized exactly what you're saying. And so they decided to, make an attractive magnet by getting a whole lot of nuclear assets in one location to see if that would draw them in. And my understanding, it was successful.
So, our nation and other nations have figured out circumstances that can, for lack of a better term, bait UAP. A certain level of nuclear footprint in a small radius tends to attract them. And our nation figured that out a long time ago, and so did other nations.
One of the things that I've thought about is, I know very little about physics, but one thing I know is how big the universe is. Now, I'm quite a big fan of SpaceX. I'm actually an investor in the company. And from my fascination with space, I've learned just how big the universe is and how long it would take us to travel from, Earth to the nearest galaxy. The closest star system to us, which is called Alpha Centauri, is over 4 light years away, which is about 24 trillion miles. If we traveled at the impossible 10% of the speed of light, which is currently impossible, it would take a ship 40 years to get there.
Now, fortunately, what we learned in looking at what might be the underlying physics and using Einstein's theory of general relativity, it turns out that there are ways of modifying effective speed of light to make it much higher or much lower. So you can do that. So when you get into potentially modifying what we call the space-time method, you could get to a point.
You want to see some real fucked up looking people? Go to your local prison at intake. You'll see some scary motherfucking looking folks.
Point where you can make wormholes and warp drives, and those are things that are not off the charts. I mean, there are actually textbooks by general relativity experts on the fact that you could re-engineer the space-time.
So you're not saying,
so you could do it. You could get from here to there.
But you're not saying you would travel in like a line like you do in a plane, right?
Well, you could. You could. If you arrange for the effective speed of light in that line to be much higher, then without breaking the speed of light, you can zoom over there very quickly. So even in the straight line.
But no one at the moment knows how to do that on Earth.
We can write the equations and see how it doesn't violate our physics equations, but we don't have the engineering prowess.
So we figured out how these craft are operating, the theory of it, but we don't have the material sciences, right?
Exactly.
To replicate it.
What I'm pointing at is if you travel at that speed across the universe, if you even hit, an object the size of a pebble, it would be like a nuclear explosion.
But the thing is, if you're modifying space, it's sort of like making like a surfer wave on at the seashore. You arrange to have space moving ahead like that. So you come up to a rock, it's just going to push it aside.
So
you can engineer that.
This is how I've wrapped my head around it. Essentially, they're warping space-time in a localized area. They're creating an immense amount of energy around the craft, and essentially a bubble around the craft. And that bubble separates the craft from the environment around it. Mm-hmm. So the environment has no impact on the craft. That's why we see transmedium travel, like a craft going smooth from space to air to the water without even a splash. The environment around the bubble has no bearing on the craft inside it. And the craft inside it is in its own space-time. And once you wrap your head around that, then things like interstellar travel become totally possible.
That's fucking just crazy. You building your app on Base 44. Describe it. And it's real.
Well, thank you, Charlie. I hope your meeting goes well.
I'm 100% more productive using this app, despite spending 50% less time typing. And that might confuse you, but let me explain, which is exactly why I invested in Whisper Flow. They're also, one of the paradoxes with this is I'm 100% effective way of scaling our sales engine over the years.
For that reason.
They did a study in 2026 and found that 45 planets are likely capable of supporting life. They called this the habitable zone, out of more than 6,000 planets discovered so far by NASA. Mm-hmm. There are approximately 1 trillion galaxies in the universe, and within these galaxies, 100,000 planets could potentially host life, according to Oxford University. Now, I believe that if you think about the entire universe, I believe that we're not the only life in the universe.
Yes, right.
I think that's
a very scientific conclusion.
Probabilistically, it would be pretty incredible if we were. I mean, it's almost inconceivable that we are. The question of whether that life has been here is a question that for me is still a big question mark. Because I think Elon, whatever you think about Elon, he is someone that seems to just say what he thinks. And this is part of what's caused his companies a lot of problem, is he seems to be pretty unfiltered. He has been asked multiple times as well if he believes that there are aliens in our galaxy, and he has said on multiple occasions that he doesn't believe that to be the case. And he's launching rockets all the time. So he said, I heard him say, if anyone should know, it should be me. Do you think he knows?
I think that you can't operate in space at the level he does, or operate as a contractor at the level he does, without having clearances that require secrecy. There's all kinds of levels of secrecy. Everyone knows the word classified, right? There's classified projects, but there's also black projects that are unacknowledged special access programs where you literally by law required to not acknowledge the existence of the program or anything it does. That's literally the
anything it knows.
Yeah, that's literally that they're literally referred to as unacknowledged special access programs.
So if you're involved, team as well.
So if you're involved with an unacknowledged special access program, and someone asks you about it, you have to say you have no idea what they're talking about.
And all of his team,
if they are a part of the program, yeah. But just because someone's read it on an unacknowledged special access program doesn't mean all their employees are.
Elon said that we have 9,000 satellites up there. He's referring to his company Starlink, and not once have we had to maneuver around an alien spaceship. He argues that if aliens were constantly visiting Earth, the aerospace experts who watch the skies every day would be the first to know.
Well, look, NASA also has said for decades that they had no evidence of extraterrestrial life for UAPs. And last Friday, the federal government released a photo of a triangle craft hovering over the 1972 Apollo space mission. So somebody's not being honest.
Right.
Which also implies a lot of other people know things that Buzz haven't revealed.
Hey, didn't Buzz say, no, they're definitely out there. They were watching us when we landed on the moon. And you would wonder why they wouldn't go back for all these fucking years. Like they don't have
heard you say before,
technology to go back there. That's
this intelligent
crazy.
life actually exists amongst us. Yeah,
Even try to make somebody believe that.
They are not occasional visitors. They live secretly alongside humans, but with advanced technology.
We have so many sightings and so many even access
What'd you
to
say?
materials.
What'd
and
you
so
ask
on.
her? I missed it.
I mean, they're all over the place.
65% of Americans believe intelligent life exists on other planets. 40% of people say military reported UFOs are probably evidence of extraterrestrial life, according to Pew Research. And 30% of Americans believe UFOs or unidentified flying objects are probably alien ships of life form. And 47% of Americans believe aliens have definitely or probably visited Earth at some point, according to YouGov. Half of Americans believe that UFOs / aliens have definitely or probably visited life at some point. Quite a lot of people.
Well, you see the Age of Disclosure film and the people that came forward. I mean, you had Clapper,
We'll put Carl in there.
head of the office.
He's
of
light years
Director
ahead of
National
everybody anyway.
Intelligence,
Yeah, it
and
sounds.
Senator Rubio at the time, now in his elevated position and so on.
Wouldn't that be some shit
You now have
if you
people
could go
of-
back in time, huh? Put Carl in a fucking capsule and send him back in time to meet his former self.
Real quality.
Like, hey,
and
leave that shit
you
alone.
know they're
Don't
not
buy
lying.
that shit from that
And they're
motherfucker.
coming forth and saying, this is real, and we got to deal with it. And there's a lot we don't know about it.
Could you be wrong?
I don't think it's about whether I'm wrong or Al's wrong. You'd have to believe that senior leadership across the government, the military, the intelligence community that has access to classified information and is saying, based on the classified information they have seen, this is a real situation. You'd have to believe all of those people are lying for some bizarre, unexplained reason. So I find that hard to believe.
Could it be the case that all of those people were misinterpreting what they were seeing? They saw something, fighter pilots saw something moving in their visors when they were up in
Not
machines.
really, because
Well,
like,
yeah, I mean, in some cases that could be the case, but then when you have actual materials,
No
crash
doubt.
craft
Smart mouth.
bodies that aren't human.
also a lot of these sightings, they're now in the process of the White House, cabinet members are in the process of identifying where the evidence exists within federal agencies and the military so they can get access to it themselves and then determine from there what can safely be shared with the public. I think once they get their hands on more evidence, then a plan will be put in place for telling the world this conclusion. And I think it's like
We're close.
fait accompli, basically. Like it's going to get to that point relatively soon.
If we get to that point and you get personally invited in to wherever they're keeping these materials and you get to see every single file that exists, and as you go through those files, you realize that a lot of what you've been told is not true because there's other explanations. How would it like fundamentally change the way that you see the world?
Some of the UAP we've seen, like take the famous, everybody knows the Tic Tac UFO, right? That Commander Dave Fravor, the Navy fighter pilot, interacted with in 2004, right?
I'll put that on the screen for anyone that hasn't seen it.
Great. And so take that UAP, for example. Multiple data collection systems and Commander Dave Fravor, a legend in the Navy, Top Gun guy, commander of an entire naval strike group, right? Like total badass, legend of a guy. He sees this with his own eyes, and a bunch of data collection systems capture data confirming it's real. This UAP went from hovering above the ocean to instantly being at 80,000 feet, which is the entrance to space, right? And it did that maneuver all afternoon. The amount of energy required to do that is so bonkers. No human beings have the ability to create that much energy in a localized area for an aircraft.
Right.
And so to answer your question, if we find out, the unthinkable, that this is not non-human intelligent life, that some humans have figured out how to crack that technology and did it as recent as 2004 when the Tic Tac incident happened, that would be even more mind-blowing than accepting that life from elsewhere is here and has been here a long time, because that would mean that some group of humans leapfrog the rest of all of humanity technologically by thousands of years and then seemingly did nothing with that.
Or it could be something else. That's the nature of unusual things.
That's
They become
true.
great
That's true.
stories. So I think in the case of the Tic Tac incident, again, what I'm trying to do is interrogate this from all angles. Could it have been something else?
Look,
Could it be
any isolated event like that? You could do the whole could it be this, could it be that thing, but it's the you got to take a step back and look at the collective. It's one report like that after another from credible people since World War II. You know, during World War II, pilots were seeing what they called Foo Fighters, like these orbs that would move alongside our fighter jets, right? Like they would they would move in line with them.
And now we have people on ships seeing these things enter the water and then moving at, you know,
impossible speeds,
50 knots or something, which no human being could
as far
do.
as I know, our fastest submarines go like 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, something like
These
that.
things are going hundreds of miles an hour under the ocean. So these craft are transmedium. They're seen in space, they're seen in the air, they're seen underwater. There's just too much activity to ignore it.
Yeah, and that would be a hard one to say, well, you know, is there some sonar thing that makes you think something is doing that? But it's seen enough times under enough different conditions that we just have to accept it as real.
Is there a reason why this hasn't been captured on like an iPhone? In 4K?
There's been a lot of stuff captured on phones and video cameras. In that scene in The Age of Disclosure I mentioned, where Hal and some of the other people break down how
it seems like so much of a waste of time. It really does. I'm gonna finish watching it just because I started it, but I'm gonna tell you now, I'm disappointed. I really am. This motherfucker is trying to distract. That's what this is.
how these things are working, and they describe that they're creating a
so
warp
much shit
bubble around
going
the
on.
craft. That warp bubble also makes it very hard to get a clear video of something, because you're taking a photo or a video through essentially a space-time barrier.
Yeah,
you know,
space-time barrier.
it's like the equivalent of taking pictures
Yeah, I
of
know, yeah.
trying to take
I wanna be
video of
Coral-
like koi fish
Coral,
in a pond from above the water. It's going to look all distorted because you're going through the water.
He likes to play
if you're,
victim.
if you're trying to video or take a photo through this bubble, it makes it pretty hard, and then you end up with the kind of videos we see.
You're probably familiar with this NASA report that they produced on UAPs, Independent Study Team report, where
Yeah.
they essentially say that they don't believe that these UAPs are aliens. Why would NASA be lying?
Like all these big bureaucracies, there's people who are aware of the truth, and then there's people who have the truth kept from them. Or, you know, one of the people I interviewed was Mike Gold, who was on the UAP, the NASA UAP task force, and he talked about how that effort was flawed from the start. They didn't want to have a result that said NASA has all this information that they've kept from the public. They wanted the result that they landed on, which is there's nothing to see here. And they were really discouraged from, for example, the that image of a triangle, what clearly appears to be a triangle craft over the moon. They were told not to include that in their report. Like they were not set up to tell the world the truth.
There should be a button just down below here. And if it says subscribed, you're already subscribed. If it says subscriber, that means you're not yet. And if you're not subscribed, please could you do us a favor and hit that button? It helps the show more than you know.
Day, like some video taken when like the bubble is turned off and you can see a craft of non-human origin clear as day. And there is evidence of the technology that's been recovered and of these bodies. And if you put yourself in my shoes, when you have so many senior people across the military, government intelligence committee telling you this, it's really just impossible to ignore it, especially when most of them aren't even friends. They're not like ideologically aligned or politically aligned. They're all just different groups of people.
I'm less compelled by eyewitnesses. Yeah. This is the problem, because I'm such a big true crime fan. You hear about all the bloody cases where eyewitness said this, and then they find out the serial killer wasn't that person, or that thing didn't happen. So, and I also just have my own experiences of like thinking I saw things when I was younger.
Here's an interesting thing you just made me think of. So in the film, Rubio and General Jim Clapper, two people who are completely ideologically and politically opposed to each other, made the same really intelligent point. And they both have knowledge at a classified level of this situation. They both said a problem we as humans have is that there's something in the human psyche that says, I cannot wrap my head around or prepare for things I haven't seen or experienced, right? And time again throughout history, that has proven to be like a human flaw, right? Rubio goes on to say that the greatest intelligence failures in U.S. history come from a lack of imagination. And he cites a few examples. He says, we never would have imagined the Japanese could figure out how to get torpedoes through the straits and hit us at Pearl Harbor until they did. He says, we never would have imagined terrorists would fly to the homeland, learn to fly commercial planes and then use them in a terrorist attack until they did. Right. He says some other examples too, but time and time again, not wrapping our head around a set of circumstances, that using our imagination to think about what might happen or what might be happening it's bit us in the ass. And he ends his line of thought by saying lack of imagination leads to strategic surprise, like Pearl Harbor, like 9/11. And sometimes strategic surprise changes the course of history. Mm-hmm. And so, him and other people I interviewed think it's really important to get ahead of this, as opposed to waiting for something to happen, as opposed to waiting for, to find out the hard way that China, cracked this technology before us and used it as in an act of war, or non-human intelligent life does something unpredictable. And then all of a sudden the US government's on its heels. And so are other governments on their heels, explaining to the public what they've known for a long time.
I've often heard that the reason why they don't tell the general public that these things exist is because the general public aren't ready for this information. Is that an argument? I've not really heard you guys say that.
Yeah, no, there are people involved in gatekeeping this information that don't think the public can handle the truth. Hal recently told me that people in the legacy program are pointing to the age of disclosure and saying, look, this film reveals a lot and people aren't losing their shit. People aren't jumping out of windows. It's not causing chaos in society. Like, the public can handle the base facts.
Of all the things you've heard, Dan, what was the most compelling story or anecdote that you heard that convinced you?
It was really just the sheer number of very high level military government intelligence officials who were telling me in private settings to my face, that at a classified level, they know with absolute certainty this is real.
But if you had to pick one story.
Oh, I mean, it really wasn't one thing for me. It was the overall. It's like, for example, I interviewed Rubio and Senator Gillibrand on the same day. They both participated in the film and did lengthy interviews with me, and both looked me in the face and told me they thought this was the most important documentary that's ever been made, and that this was really important to bring this information out in a thoughtful way to the public and make them aware of what's happening. You can't unhear stuff like that, and it makes an impact
They were
on
kissing your ass.
What about you, Hal? What was the most persuasive thing that tipped you over the edge from maybe being agnostic to believing that there are non-human intelligent life amongst us?
Well, it's looking at the technology, which is so advanced that I'm essentially certain that no us or our adversaries could have made it. So somebody actually made it, and it has to be somebody who knows a lot more about physics than we do. I mean, there's nowhere to go but to say, okay, there's somebody who is way beyond humans to develop that kind of technology and display it.
Of all the evidence that's been released and all of the rumors and videos and, going back to the crop fields that we used to hear about many years ago, presumably there's lots of this stuff that you don't believe, that you think is nonsense.
Oh, there's definitely
tons of that.
Tons of reports that are that when you look into them seem like bullshit for sure.
Because, one of the things people often say is that alien encounter descriptions perfectly match the pop culture of their era. So people saw flying saucers in the 1950s after sci-fi movies popularized them, and grey aliens in the 1980s after books like Communion popularized them. And this kind of suggests that sightings are born from human imagination versus.
Well, I think that's a reasonable place to come to. I think a lot of the reports that we get, we can generally set aside as being, just manufactured by humans who get caught up in this sort of a give and take on social media and so on. But nonetheless, when you really zero in on actual evidence of technologies and evidence of bodies, there you can't just say it's just social contagion.
When I'm thinking about the technologies, when I watch the Tic Tac video, it's kind of blurry and I don't really know what I'm looking at. There's this thing moving around on the screen that's black and white, but I don't really know what I'm looking at. And I think this has always been the struggle with it, is we're so used to consuming content in high definition that we can clearly, and it appears to be the case that so many of these UAP videos are in the distance and kind of blurry and vague. So it makes them harder to believe. And I think we're all longing for a solid video. You talked about them going in and out of the water. how come someone's not got up? If someone like falls over, and we capture it all on camera these days, CCTV cameras on every high street. Why is there not like a solid video of something going in the water and out the water?
Look, multiple people said on camera they have seen with their own eyes classified videos that are indisputable. And some of them told me specifics, like that story I told you, the first video Jay Stratton was shown when he went down this rabbit hole. It was a triangle craft hovering over a nuclear weapons site. Air Force security guards had filmed it on a little VHS camera that they had. It was hovering long enough for them to do that. That kind of evidence exists, but it's just still classified.
Will it be coming out, do you think?
I hope so. I know this process is playing out right now where people like Jay Stratton are helping the administration find where the evidence exists so they can get their hands on it and then determine whether it can safely be declassified. Like that process is definitely playing out right now.
Do you trust the Trump administration to release all of the available information?
I don't think it's a question of do we trust the current administration will release it. It's do we think all these federal agencies and branches of the military are going to turn over the evidence they have to the administration? That's the question. And the jury's still out on that. They're not right now. They're pushing back, and they're pushing back hard. And that's why the administration is working with people like Stratton, like Jay Stratton, who over 16 years has learned where a lot of this evidence is. They're working with people like him to find out where the evidence sits, who keeping it at each of these different organizations, and how to get to it. So they're doing a fact-finding mission right now.
Whoa, what's that on your face?
This is my Bond Charge face mask. I've been wearing this for some time now. They're a sponsor of the podcast. I put this on for 15, 20 minutes a day. I can sit here, DOAC. The deal applies site-wide. If it is released, if all the information that you've heard from your witnesses is released, if they release, alien craft, and they release alien bodies and all of these things, how do you imagine the world would be different?
I think it will lead to a giant technology boom. I think once we're told, hey, there's this technology that exists that could revolutionize the way we live, it could lead to anti-gravity technology. It could lead to
new energy sources,
right. Solve the energy crisis overnight, right? It could lead to interstellar travel and going farther out,
And I think it would have a great psychological effect because, if suddenly you go from the point of saying, well, maybe we're the only intelligent species in the universe, and then you suddenly get the idea that this is a universe full of life.
What does that mean for religion?
I think all dogmas will just apply to it, and I think the Vatican's already gotten ahead of it and said, they put out a message a couple of years ago that basically the gist of it was, God's universe and God's work is vast and,
vast. And
like basically
you couldn't say that he wouldn't have the ability to do that. I mean,
bro, it won't be long. Canada's going to be ours. From what I'm seeing,
in the case of the Catholic Church, they've had very positive views.
Listen, everything in this hemisphere, you watch and see. In mine in your lifetime, we'll be able to travel to without a passport. You watch and see.
About
I honestly believe
population being throughout the universe.
And there's nothing really, in the Catholic Church's perspective, there's nothing that counters it doesn't allow you to wrap your head around the fact that there's other life out there, Are
you guys religious?
Not like overly religious, but like, my mom's Irish and grew up going to Catholic school. And I went to CCD on, Sunday school. It's called a CCD where I grew up. But
do you believe in God?
I do.
Do you believe in God?
I do too. Yeah. And I'm a practicing Catholic.
Bro,
so would that mean that you believe God has made all of these?
Do they have ferries that run from Washington to Alaska? Like that'll take your car?
Aliens as well.
That's what my worldview is.
Yeah, I would think that I
never even
couldn't say
checked
that's
into
not
that.
the case. But as a scientist, I can't prove that it is the
What's
case.
up,
but
Smoke?
just on the statistics of it, it's pretty likely.
An interesting thing happening right now, Stephen, too, is these people who have been gatekeeping the truth.
For me, Dan.
A lot of them are afraid to come forward and tell the White House what they know because they think they're going to be villainized. They think the optics around this are such that, like, if someone's been covering this up, they're the villain of the story, right? And so the White House and the Director of National Intelligence and the Department of War realize this. And so in the last couple of weeks, they've been messaging out to the military and the intelligence community that this is not a witch hunt. It's not an endeavor to punish anyone. They want to encourage people to come forward. They assure them there will be no punishment for being involved in gatekeeping this. They just want to learn the truth and find out where the real evidence sits. So that's another thing that's playing out right now that I think if it gets out there enough, it will lead to more people coming forward with that evidence we all want to see.
Yeah.
Earlier on, you talked about how some people feel like their lives are at risk because of what they know. Has there been any instance of anyone being punished for saying anything in this regard?
Well, certainly having their clearances pulled or losing their opportunities for advancement. We've heard stories like that from several people in the intelligence.
Is there anyone you can name that has said that they were threatened?
I just looked that up and says, I asked that same very question. Yes, you can take a ferry from Washington to Alaska with your car via the Alaskan Marine Highway System. Ferries depart from Burlingame, Washington, and travel to various Southeast Alaska ports, including Ketchikan, Juneau, Haines, and Skagway. This service operates year-round, but requires advanced booking for vehicles. That's what's up. I did not know that. Look the fuck out.
Or punished or in some form because of what they
Well, certainly the number one whistleblower for many people has been David Grush. And so he has outlined the various steps taken against him to basically ruin his career, significantly enough that he went to the Inspector General of the intelligence community and said, I'm being punished, shoved aside, losing clearances and so on, because I came out with this data. And they said, well, what you provided us is, serious, worthy of consideration.
And I think a lot of people have had their lives threatened.
Yeah.
I'm not certain if anyone has been killed, but I know people have had their lives threatened.
No.
And who's threatening them?
People that are involved in this program, referred to as the Legacy Program.
Who think that the evidence should not ever come out.
This Legacy Program, so this is a program ran within the U.S. government?
Yeah, you got to book it ahead of time.
Elements of it, and also defense contractors.
And you think the Legacy Program knows the truth on this regard?
Yes, because they have the firsthand evidence of the crash materials and the bodies.
There's 80 years of data that this group has.
And they haven't released or leaked that data for the last 80 years?
There'd be no advantage.
No one's hacked it?
This program is the epitome of a special access program. I think this program is as off the grid as it could possibly be.
It almost seems like there's nothing that eventually hasn't come to light that the government have done. Like, I've sat here and interviewed a lot of CIA spies who've told me the history of the CIA and this program that lasted for 12 years, and then it comes out, and this program, and I mean, even some of the stuff that I've heard you talk about, how around what's it called?
Remote viewing.
Remote
viewing.
Yeah.
That was a CIA project.
That was CIA.
What is remote viewing?
Remote viewing, well, the CIA suddenly got concerned because they saw that the Soviets were spending millions of dollars at some of their best institutes to investigate the possible use of, quote, ESP.
What's ESP?
Psychic ability.
Yeah, psychic abilities, extrasensory perception. And so, as it turns out, I was at Stanford Research Institute, and they saw my background. They came to me and said, we'd like for you to look into this. Is there anything to this? I mean, no scientist in America even believes there is such a thing as ESP.
Who came to you?
CIA.
This is in the 70s.
Yeah,
The CIA
in the 70s.
The CIA approached you in the 70s and asked you to investigate remote viewing.
That's right. And so they asked me to set up a small program, and 50 or 60K or whatever. And they said, we hope you'll find this is all nonsense. We forget about it. We don't have to worry about it. And it grew into, more than a 2-decade program, millions of dollars. Stargate is the label for it that most people know about, because by now most of the information in the program came out. And basically, we just found that people essentially, just like you have artistic ability or athletic ability or whatever, musical ability, well, we found out that remote viewing, this ability to sit in a location and pick up information from some place far away, is the talent.
So it's between $1,500 and $2,500, smart mouth.
That many people could
Depending on
demonstrate.
and
And
it's a
so we
2-day
ended up
journey.
Actually training Army intelligence officers at the Army Intelligence and Security Command.
It's $1,200 to take a vehicle.
How to do this. And so
wait, let me just
$400 to
simplify this for the
$500
audience that
per
might
person.
not fully understand what we're talking about. So remote viewing is the idea that I could sit here in London where we are now, and I could be trained to see what was going on in another part of the world.
To make your mind's eye go to a remote location.
I'll give you a specific example. A Soviet plane that CIA wanted to get hold of went down somewhere in Africa.
And they got a
didn't know
barge
where
service,
because
too.
The pilot had bailed out and it just went on until it ran out of gas. So we got two of our, quote, best remote viewers, one that worked for the Air Force and one that worked for my organization.
I
to
didn't
say,
know they
okay,
did.
Here's a map of Africa. Where's that damn plane? We got to go in and get it. And they
It
put an
just
X on
goes,
the map.
if they did that, if the CIA did that, then that just verifies what we all thought about them anyway with JFK. And I'm going to tell you something. Charlie, same shit, dude. There was identical fucking, that shit pisses me off when I think about it, man.
It was in 3 miles of where the
I know
plane
it
went
shouldn't
down.
bother
I
me
don't
the way that it does, but it does. For people just, I mean, come on, man, because the guy was fucking intelligent. Social
thousands of
media
square
can be
miles.
dangerous.
And so
bro.
the CIA went in
It
and
really
got the
can.
plane. So I mean, it was.
What's up, Zach?
How do they do that? Well,
By the way, there's an audio recording of President Jimmy Carter telling us.
You know, and that's one of the reasons why I have like held back on putting my creative side on YouTube. Not saying that I would get traction and take off, but it's, man.
Story.
Yeah.
Post presidency.
Maybe we should play that.
One time we had a small plane go down somewhere
It's one
in
of the things
Africa.
that kind of scared me
We
about
were not able to
social
find it
media.
by surveillance from our satellites. So the director of the CIA, he was also director of all the intelligence agencies, heard about a woman in California that was a medium. And he contacted her, and she gave him the latitude and longitude of the plane's whereabouts. And the next time one of our space satellites went over that area, we located the plane where she said it was.
Again, this sounds like it's impossible.
Sounds like
It sounds,
It sounds completely bananas. It sounds like something out of an X-Men comic book.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy, but
well, I was okay.
There's
you
so
want to be
much
really
data.
practical about it. You know, they often are skeptics would say, well, if they're so psychic, why aren't they rich? Why aren't they in the stock market or whatever? So we set up a little program on a challenge to predict silver futures.
To predict what?
Silver futures.
just the value of silver.
Yeah, the value of
Silver.
silver on a daily basis, was it going to go up or go down? So we had somebody said, okay, I will, if you'll set up a little program like that for 30 days, I'll bet on what your quote remote viewers say, and I'll put the money in, and I'll give you 10% of what I make. Said, okay, fine. Now, long story short, made $260,000 in the 30 days. We got our 10%, which is $26,000. So people could actually, in this case, even look into the future a day and generate a description of what they were going to see and handle the following day.
Presumably not everybody. How many people did you have do that experiment?
We had 7 in that experiment.
And how many of them were successful in generating?
6 of the 7 generated really good data.
So are those 6 of people now rich?
Well, I don't know. Some of them may have followed up.
Why were those 6 people picked?
Since we had learned that sort of anybody can do this, we were actually raising money for a school that was being put together. So I just went to the board of directors and said, okay, I'm going to give you a crash course over the weekend in, quote, remote viewing of the type we train intelligence officers to do. And so you're going to be it.
So it was the board of the school?
Yeah, board of the school. Yeah.
Okay.
And they all knew what I did for a living. And so
this program, Stargate, got so much actionable intelligence from the remote viewers that Hal started briefing at the time the director of the CIA on a regular basis.
Yeah, I briefed all the way up to Bill Casey, the director of the CIA. Yeah.
So does it still exist, this program, in any capacity? Remote viewing?
If it does, you wouldn't hear about it.
Why?
Because it would be a black, highly classified program.
Why?
Because we don't want our adversaries to know how we might be getting access to their data.
You just told us.
But people can not believe that, and that's fine.
But aren't you under some sort of contract?
Well, as it turns out, the CIA and DIA, also went to the DIA. That program finally got declassified at the level that it was operating at, and that you can go to the CIA reading room and you can get all the documents on it.
So work was originally classified?
Oh, it was originally top secret.
Smart Mouth, they also got barges too. Like if you don't, it's supposedly cheaper, and they'll load your truck on there. I don't know how much it costs, but it's supposedly cheaper.
The special access program, yeah.
There's a part of me that goes, listen, if people could do remote viewing and see, into other parts of the world or predict the things that you're saying, I mean, if it was trainable, everything, so life as we know it would be completely flipped on its head.
I think it's unreasonable to think that when Stargate became public, the U.S. government stopped remote viewing.
I mean, I wouldn't stop if I was the U.S. government. No. If it worked, I wouldn't stop.
I think it just went underground, moved to a different agency.
Yeah, went underground.
So you were training people to do it, though?
Yeah, we had people that we trained.
So train me.
Okay, well, yeah.
How do you train?
Now, a number of the military intelligence officers that we trained have now left the military, and they do have training courses.
Do you believe it?
I do. At first, I thought it just sounded too much like something in a comic book, right? Mm-hmm. But the more I first read about Stargate and the declassified documents, started to realize how serious the government took it. And the more I learned about it through Hal, and then eventually, I really don't want to get into the details of this, but eventually I got connected with someone who has done remote viewing for the government, and they did a demonstration for me that blew my mind.
Because you would think if anyone was capable of doing remote viewing, they could go on the internet and make one prediction or do one video that would be, proven to be true, and they would literally be considered to be a superhuman. Like they would literally be, people would probably think they were a deity or a spiritual leader or something.
Well,
if one person could do it.
What I found was that it seems to be an action that is just part of the human makeup. And so it isn't like they're a super deity or a godlike or really off the charts. It's something that people can learn to do, like they can learn to play the piano or whatever, for whatever reason.
Maybe
now,
it was a skill
now
set
we
a
have
long time
new psychiatrists and
Grizz. What if we are aliens to this planet, bro? What if that's how we got here?
neurophysiologists beginning to study, how does consciousness do its thing in the brain and so on? And are there elements of it, once you get into quantum theory and quantum entanglement, that would say you could have evidence, beyond just our physical?
What if something in our DNA blocks out like our, I don't know, it's almost, I don't know, it's crazy. Like how did people back in the old times without technology and stuff know what they could eat, what they could and couldn't eat, and what was poisonous? And you can't tell me all that's through trial and error. You know what I mean? There's something that's missing.
Physical structure.
Like it could be rationalized with like a quantum connection, basically the moving your mind's eye to another location, which also goes to like, Hal's life very interestingly, first was the Stargate stuff, and then he got into UAP, and the overlap that I find fascinating is some of these craft that have been
speak shit into existence and not putting stuff out in the atmosphere, when you're talking on somebody, because the shit will come true. How many times have you thought something about somebody and the shit end up being true?
Found or crashes that have happened. The reports from people involved say that a lot of them don't have any control panels in them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're basically empty other than seats, which suggests that maybe there's some sort of mind connection controlling these craft.
I did wonder about the crafts. I thought, if I was an advanced civilization, why would I, and I was that smart, why would I send life to these planets when I could just send the crafts? Why am I sending biological life when I could just send the...
Maybe they're manufactured biological life. Maybe they're the equivalent. Maybe they're not sentient.
Don't be depressed, bro. Happiness,
but
is
the
a
remote
mind
viewing
state. Let me tell you something. I did quite a bit of time in prison, and I'm gonna be honest with you. There's a lot of it that I just, not that I don't remember, but I just blocked it out. Like I just didn't let it fucking cloud my mind. You understand what I'm saying? Happiness is a fucking mind state. You could be happy anywhere. Don't ever be depressed about nothing. Nothing's that fucking serious, man.
Stuff opens up a lot of possibilities.
We, as part of this CIA program, we found that people could affect quantum devices that were totally shielded by superconducting shielding.
Well, tell them that particular story.
There's a quote psychic, so-called, and so I brought him to Stanford, and I was skeptical at the time. And I said, okay, well, we've got this super experiment where there's tiny quantum.
I want to buy your house. I can pay you cash for your house, no matter what condition it's in.
Chip down inside of this electrical shielding, magnetic shielding, superconducting shielding. We want to see if you can affect it. And he did. I mean, this is supposed to be totally non-affectable by anything on the outside. In fact, it was developed by the Navy to just look for corks and stuff like that. And so it was supposed to not be influenced from the outside by anything. And he influenced it. And when I say he influenced it, I'm not just saying there's a little blip that, you could kind of read into it. No, it was a system where it ordinarily just had an oscillating signal like that. And then when he affected it, just stopped the oscillation. And then he could also make the oscillation go twice as fast. And of course, the poor graduate student whose life depended on this not being affected from the outside, really. But then that raised a big issue for them. That means, does that mean if we hide our documents inside of superconducting safes, the Russians might be able to? So actually, when we had détente, the American remote viewers got together with the Soviet remote viewers and traded war stories, did experiments together for.
I think I'm naturally skeptical because I'm skeptical with all things, but I'm often proven wrong. So, my fiance, she believes lots of things I don't believe. And so frequently she's been proven right in those things that I remain open-minded to things in life because I've learned to. So I think that's where I remain. I remain open-minded. And I think on the balance of probability, if you ask me, do I think there's other life in the universe? I think it would be crazy to say there wasn't.
Right.
But has there been life that has arrived here that we've recovered? I would need more evidence. Is there any...
I think that's the right attitude. And we're hoping that with the release of documents that's starting to happen now, that you'll get that evidence. But in the absence of actually getting access to the evidence, it's very reasonable to be skeptical.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I do think, though, the current administration in the U.S. is so focused on following through with this directive the president gave to get all the evidence within the possession of the federal government, all the different agencies, the military branches, and then figure out what can be declassified. I think they're taking it so serious that we're gonna get to more tranches of more meaningful evidence, and I think eventually we'll get to that thing that moment that we've all only seen in movies, where a sitting president steps to a microphone and tells the world we're not alone in the universe. I think we're gonna get there.
I think so too.
Just a matter of time.
Does it change the meaning of life if that becomes the case? Does it mean anything for us as humans? What do you think the meaning of life is, Hal? And do you think we should change our behavior in any way, even if this moment does occur?
I think if we found out that there were life throughout the universe, that it can be developed in all kinds of forms, then that makes us take a new look at, well, what does it mean to be human? You know, we ought to think about, if we can, interacting with these other species and seeing what we can learn from them and what might they learn from us. And so it just opens up a whole new sort of view of what the universe is like. I mean, I've got 15 grandkids. They should grow up in a universe where it's teeming with life, and they know that, and that's a very kind of an exciting kind of thing.
I think it also could be the one thing that could unify all of humanity. You know, yes. Reagan gave a great speech during his presidency at the United Nations where he said he often thinks that it might be a threat from outside this universe that makes all of humanity come together and think more about what it has in common than its differences, and, you know, it moves them past the conflicts of the moment. And that might be, you know, wishful thinking and might be naive, but it also might actually be the one thing that could line people up.
Has it changed how you think about the meaning of life?
Between what I've learned about the reality of the UAP situation and the existence of non-human intelligent life, and what I've learned about, for example, remote viewing, it's made me realize that.
All right, y'all, I'm fixing to go take care of some shit. I just got some stuff I got to do this morning. I appreciate y'all chilling with me while I was kind of getting motivated. And y'all have a good day. We might get later on this afternoon. We'll holler at y'all. Peace.